Hello everyone, welcome to the latest project on this channel, and in this project we're gonna build a fully functional wallpaper app. As you can see, this app will be compatible with the web, Android and iOS as well. You will learn about React Native Reanimated, API integration, responsiveness, vector icons, gradients and so much more in this single project. And this project is going to help you upgrade your React Native skills even if you are a beginner or professional React Native developer. If you are new to the channel, then do subscribe the channel for more cool projects like this one. So without further wasting any time, let me show you the demo of the app. If we refresh the app, we will see this cool animation where the title of the app will just fade in from the bottom. And this animation will appear on the website as well. So let's just explore the app. So this is the homepage of the application where you will see the search bar, the categories, and at the bottom you can see all the wallpapers. And here I've implemented a masonry layout where all the images will have a different height, similar to how it's implemented in the Pinterest app. And we have also added pagination. So if you scroll at the bottom, more images will load. We're not loading all the images at once. And at the top you can see we have the categories, and this is a slider. So if we click on any category, it will load all the images related to that. So let's click on education, and it's going to fetch all the images based on our selection. And we can choose other categories like, let's say, health, and it's going to load all the images for health category. And if we click on any image, this is going to pop up the image, and we will have some actions at the bottom, and we have a very cool background blur which I will show you how to implement. So if I click on download, this will say image downloaded, and this will download the image into local storage of the device. And if I share the image, this model will pop up to share the image on whatever app you want. This has all the options in the phone. So let me just close this, and let's explore another category. Let's open cat animals, and here you can see all the images related to animals. I can open any and close, and this all works on the Android device as well. So if I hit on explore, you will see all the images. And by the way, we have implemented the image caching. We are using Expo image, so this caches the image and improves the loading time. So this is all working great. Now let me show you the filters model. If I open this model, you can see all the filters just pops in from the bottom, and here you can apply all the filters like order, orientation, type, or the color of the images. So I'll just choose latest images with orange colors. So if I apply, we will see all the images with our filters, and we are seeing all the images in the animal category. So if I scroll down, you can see more images, and at the bottom you can see all the actions. So they can click on any other image and it will show all the details. So we can remove one filter at a time. So if I just remove the orange color, this is going to show all the latest images of the animal category. And let's open this, close this. And if I want to remove all the filters, I'll just hit a reset button in the filters model, and this is going to show the default pictures in the animal category. And we can search for the images too. Let's search for cats, and it's going to show all the images related to cat. So we're seeing a lot of images, and if I scroll at the bottom, this will load the next page results. And by the way, we are using Pixabay for our API integration. So all of these images are coming from Pixabay API. I'll show you how to integrate that API into our project. So this is all working great. So this is how the features are working on iOS device, and same are working on the Android devices as well. So if I search for any term, let's say code, and this will show the results based on our search keyword, and we can open the details of the app. We can see all the results, and we can click on any category and it will show all the images in that category. So let's search for food, and it's going to show the results for food images. If I click on any, this is going to show the results. And if I open the filters model, I can apply any filter I want. So let's say all the latest images with the vertical orientation and with having black color, let's apply. So now we are seeing all the food images that are latest, vertical, and have a black color. Now similarly, you can search for any term and apply any filters and you will get the results for that. Now let's explore these features on the web version. So here you can see our home screen and we are seeing all the wallpapers. If we scroll at the bottom, this will show the next images, and we are fetching like 30 to 40 images per API call. We're not fetching all the images in one API call and showing that in a long list. And I'm also using the flash list for this image grid, so the performance will be improved. And if we click on any image in the web version, you can see all the actions, and if I download it, it's going to open the image into another window. So let's close it and explore the categories. Let's click on travel, and this will show all the images in the travel section. If you share any image, this is going to just copy the link of that image, because we are not on a smartphone, we are on a web version of this application. And let's search for any keyword. Let's search for rabbits, and this is going to show all the rabbit images. Let's search for rocket, and this is going to show all the images with rockets. So we can open any image and see the details, and we can apply the filters to this search as well. So let's open our filters model, and this is going to work the same as it did on mobile devices. So let's search for latest horizontal images, and this is going to show all the images, and if we click on any, it's going to open the details. So this was a brief demo of how all the features are working on all the platforms. You're gonna learn a lot by building this app, because I've used all the latest libraries in this project like Reanimated and Expo SDK 50. So without wasting any more time, let's start building this app. I'll be using this tool called eraser.io to better understand the flow of our application and to track the progress while we develop this app. On the left side, you can see a document where I've already added all the steps that we'll perform while building this app. And on the right hand side, you can see we have a blank canvas where we can basically add any kind of mockup. Like we will add all the mockups via for all the screens on the right hand side. So let's start with the first step, which is to install our app. And first you need to go to Expo website, and there you need to go to installation page. You can go to router/installation, or you can go to installation tab in the sidebar, and there you will find this page. So this is the command to install the latest Expo project. Let's just copy this and paste it into the terminal, and let's name our app as Wallpaper App. Now it's gonna take some time, and basically it depends on your internet speed. So I'm just gonna pause this and resume when it's done. Okay, so this is finished. We can close the terminal. I've already opened the project into VS Code, so let's make it full screen here. And first let's try to run this project using npm run iOS command. It's going to build the app for iOS, and it will open the iOS simulator as well. So it's opening iPhone 15 Pro, opening iOS simulator, and it's already opened on my second screen. So I'll just drag it here, and I'll adjust it to the code window as well, like this, and it's building. Okay, so let's just minimize this, and we can see the app is running. We have a model, and at the bottom we can see two tabs, which is the default boilerplate for our Expo app. So in the package.json, you can see we are using the latest Expo SDK 50. So all of the screens will go into app folder. So here we have the tabs and the model. We don't really need them, so let's just delete them. We will start from scratch, and here you can see we need to create an index file. We don't really need the components as well, so let's just mark all of them and we will delete them. And we have the constants. We don't really need this as well, so let's just delete it. And now in the assets folder, I'm just going to paste some images that we will use throughout the development. So these are the images that will be used on the welcome screen. So let's just save them here. And now let's create our first component as index.js. I'm not going to explain how Expo Router or the file-based routing works. I have another detailed video about this, so I'll suggest you watch that video before you watch this project. So just refresh the page and this error will go away. We can see the welcome screen. Now, before we start designing this screen, we need to add some of the libraries that we will use for development. So let's just close the server. And first we need to install React Native Reanimated. So let's go to their website, and here is their website. So just hit on get started. And this first command creates an Expo app with Reanimated already installed, but we already have a project. So let's just copy this second command and install Reanimated. Okay, it's installing. Now we need to add this Babel plugin for Reanimated. So let's just copy this plugin into our Babel configuration file. We don't have the plugins property, so let's just copy all of this and paste it here. Move this, and this should be good to go. But make sure this plugin has to be the last in this plugins array. Now we can use this command to reset the cache, but we need to install another library first, and that is Expo linear gradients. Let's copy this and paste it here. And we need to install Expo vector icons as well. So let's copy the installing command and paste it here. Okay, so now I'm gonna create another file inside constants folder as theme.js, and this will include all the variables that we'll be using throughout the development. So this has all the colors, font weights, and all the radiuses. So you can pause the screen and change all the configurations according to however you like, but I'll be using these configurations. We have the colors, we have the font weight, radius, we have the neutral color that takes an opacity. Now I'm going to create some of the helpers that will be used through the development. These common helpers will be used for making our UI responsive as well. So let's create a function WP, and that stands for width percentage, and we will use the device width to create a percentage of whatever the value we pass in. So we need to use the device width, and that we can get from the device dimensions. So let's get the width as the device width and height as the device height from the dimensions from React Native. And we can use the get method, and we need to pass the window. So this will get the dimensions from the current window. Now we can use this to calculate the percentage based on whatever the percentage value we pass into this function. So let's multiply it with the width and divide it by 100. Now we're gonna copy this one more time for our height percentage. So we'll call it WP. And the idea is basically the same. We just need to change the device width to device height. And let's change this to height as well. And let's save this. Now we're gonna run that command to reset our cache and start the project. So let's just copy this command and paste it here. And it's building. Now we need to press I to build the app for iOS. And the app is running and we don't see any error. That's a good sign. Now let's start designing this screen. But before that, let me show you how we will design this screen. So we have created the app, installed libraries, set up theme, set up helpers. Now we're gonna create this welcome screen. So let's create a mockup first. Let's pick a rectangle, and let's say this is our welcome screen. Actually, let's just call it welcome screen here. And inside this, first we're gonna have a background image. So let's add a background image and place it here. So let's just say this is a background image, and on top of that here we will need to add a linear gradient. So let's create another rectangle on top of this, and for this linear gradient, this is going to take the height like 65% of the total height. So this will be our linear gradient. How do I make this straight? Okay, so this will be the linear gradient, and on top of this linear gradient we're going to add the contents of our welcome page, and here we will add a title as pixels because this is the title of our app. So here we will have a pixels title, and at the bottom we will have our punchline. So we will have a punchline of every pixel tells a story. Let's paste it here, and at the bottom we will have another button to start the application that will basically move the application from this screen to our home screen. So this will say start explore. So this is how our welcome screen will look like. Obviously it will look better when we create it. So on the left side you can see we have some steps that we will perform while building this screen. So let's start with the background image. Here first we need to create our styles using the style sheet. Let's import it from React Native. Okay, now let's start designing. Let's give this styles of container, and let's remove this. Here we're gonna use a component as status bar from Expo status bar, and we're gonna give it a style of light because we're gonna use the light fonts in the status bar. As you can see, it's white. Now here we're gonna import an image. So let's import the image from React Native and give this a source from our assets, and I've already added this image into our assets as welcome image. So welcome.png, and let's give it a style using our styles dot background image. Let's add a resize mode as cover. Now let's close this and save this. Okay, now we see another problem. We have a status, we have the header. So to remove this, we're gonna create another layout file inside our root directory in app directory. So let's create the layout file, and let's create a basic functional component inside this, and let's save this. Okay, we can see the layout. Now we're gonna remove this and create a stack navigation here. So let's import the stack from Expo Router. And if we save it like this is going to add the header with the name of the current file. But let's just create another screen inside this stack using stack.screen component, and let's name this index because this is the name of our file. And we need to provide some options like header shown to false, and let's close this and save this. Okay, so the header is gone. Now we have the full screen to work with. So let's go to index.js file and start designing. Let's add styles for the container, and we will give this a flex 1 so that it takes full space. And for our background image, we're going to add a width of 100%, and we can use the WP method that we created earlier. And if I give this 100 value, that means it's going to take 100% width of the current device. And same goes for HP. If I give 100, it's going to take 100% height of the current device. Now we're gonna set it to absolute because we're gonna add some content on top of this image later, so it's absolute. Now after this image, we're gonna add a linear gradient. So let's go to eraser, and we have added the background image, so let's just mark it as done. Now we're gonna work on our gradient. So gradient will be here. So let's move to our app and let's create the gradient here. So let's just create a comment first, linear gradient, and we will have a view. Let's style it as flex1, and inside this we're going to add the linear gradient from Expo linear gradient that we installed earlier. And we're gonna provide some options here, starting with the colors. This will be an array of the colors, and we're going to use the white color with different opacities because we want to have a gradient from top to bottom, and the top portion will be transparent. So That's why we need to add the white color with 0 opacity. So let's change this to 0.5 opacity as we move to the bottom, and at the very bottom we will have white color. So let's give this a style using styles dot gradient, which we will create later. And we need to specify the starting and the ending location of this gradient. So let's just copy these values, x as 0.5, y as 0 for the start, and for the end x will be 0.5 and y will be 0.8. Now let's close this and save this. Now you won't see this because we haven't applied any styles to this. Now let's add styles for this gradient. And first we're gonna add a width. This will take the full width of the device, and height will be 65% of the current device. And we need to add the bottom as 0 so that it sticks at the bottom. So let's add bottom as 0, and we need to make it absolute as well so that we can add the title and the punchline on top of it. So now we have a gradient at the bottom and it's looking good. So the gradient part is done. Now the reason why I added this view on top is because I'm gonna animate this gradient so that it fades in from the bottom. So let's mark it as done. Actually, let's add the animations now, and we will update this tab as animations in this tab as well. So let's add animations now, and then we'll mark this as done. So to add the animations, we're gonna import the animated library from React Native Reanimated, and we're gonna use the view, and we're gonna add an entering property that will basically mean it will animate when it renders on the screen, and we're gonna use the fade in down animation with a duration of 600. So let's save this, and we got an error, and I know this error is because we're using the latest version of React Native Reanimated. I faced this error before. So as you can see in the console, it's suggesting to use the 3.6.2 version. So we will stop our server and we will install this version of React Native Reanimated 3.6.2 and hit enter. Okay, it's installed. Now let's close the application and run npm run iOS again. Okay, we need to click R on this device. Okay, now we can see the animation. It fades in from the bottom. Let me just minimize this. And to see the animation again, we need to reload the application, and you can see how our gradient fades in from the bottom. So let me just mark this as done. We have completed the gradient step as well. Now we're gonna add contents on top of that gradient. That will be our title, punchline, and our start button. So let's move to our application, and here we're gonna add a comment for our content, and let's create a view and give this a style of content container, which we will add later. And inside this, first we're gonna add the title. So let's add a text and give it a style of title, and let's close this. We need to format it, and it will say pixels. Now let's copy this one more time for our punchline, and this time it will say every pixel tells a story. So every word should start with a capital letter. So let's change this like this, and for the style we will have a punchline style later. So after this, we're gonna add another view for our start button. We are going to wrap it inside a view because we're gonna animate it. So let's add a pressable, and inside of this we're gonna add a text property which will be start explore, and let's give this pressable a style as style start button, and same for the text, give this a style of style start text. Okay, now all of this is done, and we can see we have the content here at the top, but we need to show it at the bottom on the gradient. So let's give the content container some styles so that we can position it accordingly. Content container, and first we need to give this a full space, so flex 1, and we need to align the items in the center, justify flex end, so that all the content moves to the end of the container. So we can see we have the content at the end. We need to add a gap between these lines, so let's add a gap of 14. Now we have a gap. Now let's add the style for our title. Now we're gonna make the font size responsive because we are using the app on all the platforms. So we're gonna use the HP function to give it a font size of height percentage of 4, let's say 7. Okay, it looks good now. And for the color, we're gonna use the colors from our theme. Let's import the theme object. And as I've already shown you guys, we have some predefined colors like white, black, gray, and we have this neutral color which takes an opacity. So we're gonna use the neutral color here. So theme dot colors dot neutral, and let's use the opacity 0.9 like this. And for the font weight, we already have this in our theme, so let's use bold, and it's bold. Now next we're gonna add the style for our punchline, so let's use the responsive font size as HP2, and let's increase the letter spacing as 1, margin bottom of 10, and let's give it a font weight of medium from our theme like this, and save this. Okay, we can see our punchline. Now let's add styles for our start button, and first we're gonna give this a margin bottom of 50. And for the background color, let's use the same neutral color from our theme with an opacity of 0.9, and let's give it a padding of 15 so that we can see the background color. Okay, we can see the background color. Let's increase the padding horizontally to 90. Looks good. And let's round the borders using border radius. We already have the radiuses in our theme, so let's choose the radius.xl, and it's rounded. Let's use one more property, border curve as continuous. Okay, so now to see the text, we're gonna add styles for our start text. And first we need to add the color as white. We already have the white color in our theme, so let's use that. Okay, so we can see the text on the button. Now let's give it a font size of HP3 so that it's responsive. Let's add a font weight from our theme as medium, and let's increase the letter spacing by 1 pixel and save it. Okay, now we can see the button. Now if I reload the app, you will see it animates from the bottom because the gradient fades in from the bottom, and because all of the content is in the gradient, that's why it's animating. But we're gonna add the animation for the title and the punchline as well. So let's mark the content as done, and for the animation we are gonna use the layout animations so that first the pixels will animate, then the punchline, and then the start button, so they will animate one after another. We're gonna use a delay function for that. So let's move to our app, and first we need to wrap this title text into animated.text, and then we're gonna use the entering property, and we will use fade in down animation with a delay of 400, and we're gonna use a springify method to have a spring like motion. As you can see, it animates like a spring. So let's copy this for our punchline, and we will increase the delay so that it animates after the title. Now let's change this view to animated view, and we're gonna copy the entering property from the punchline, and we're gonna increase the delay so that it animates after the punchline, and let's save this. We can already see it animating. Let's just reload the app to see all the animations. So as you can see, our gradient is animating and all of the content is animating line by line, one after another. So, and it's looking good. Now let's mark this animation as done, and with this our home screen is complete. Only thing left is when we click on the start button, it should move to the home screen, and on the home screen we will perform all of these steps to create header, search bar, categories and image grid. But before that we need to move to home screen. So first we need to create the router. So let's move to the top, and here let's just create a router using the hook use router, and make sure to import it from Expo Router. And when we press on this start explore button, we need to use the push method on this router to move to the home screen, which we haven't created yet. So let's just save this, and if we click on this we will get an error. So let's create our home screen. Let's create a folder home. Let's create an index.js file inside this, a functional component as home screen. Let's save this, and now if we click on this we are still getting an error. It should work, but anyway, let's add it inside our layout file. Let's just copy the stack.screen for our home/index file, and we will leave the header shown to false. Let's just save this and let's try again. Okay, let's just refresh the app. Maybe it's just a cache issue. Okay, we are moving to home screen, so you can see the home screen test. Now let's start designing, but before designing we need to create a mockup of the home screen. So let's create a screen using rectangle, and this will be our screen, home screen. Let's just add a text, home screen. Then on the top left corner we're gonna have a logo which will be the title of the app. So let's just place title here, and on the top right corner we're gonna have an icon. So if we press slash, this opens up this model and we can search for anything. So let's search for bars. Yes, I like this one. So let's place this icon here. When pressing this icon, this should open a filters model later, so we'll work on that later. Now this is our header, so let's place an arrow to this one. So this will be our header, and after the header we're gonna have a search bar here. So let's create a search bar, and by the way this search bar will be fully functional, so you would be able to search for any image you want. You just need to type the text and it's going to search automatically. So inside this search bar on the left side we are going to have an icon for this magnifying glass. So let's place it here, and after this search bar we're gonna have a list of all the categories. So let's use a rounded shape oval, and let's just call this one a property, sorry, category. And let's just copy this a few more times because this is going to be a horizontal list, and we should be able to scroll through all of the categories and we should be able to select any category. So these will be categories, and after the categories at the bottom we are gonna have a list of all the images that will be fetched based on the search based on the category. So let's add the image grid here. This will be a grid and this will be dynamic on every device. On tablet it will be different, on phone it will be different, and on the website on the desktop version it's going to have different columns. So I will show you how you can implement this. So these will be images, and as you can see these images are looking boring because all of them have a same height and same width. But we're not gonna use this. We're gonna use something called Masonry Layout, and inside Masonry Layout all of the items can have different heights. So if you know Pinterest app you will be familiar with this layout. So let's just say this is the Masonry Layout, and the second item can have a different height, and let's copy this one. This third item can have a different height. Let's add a few more images to show you what I mean. Let's copy this one here. And let's copy this one to the side as well, and maybe this one here, and let's add a smaller one to the left side, right side, and make this a bit bigger. Now all of these images can have a different aspect ratio, so we're gonna use their aspect ratio to give them height respectively. So let's say this image was vertical, so we will have a 200 by 400 size for this one, and this image was 200 width, and let's say 200 because this can be a landscape image. So all of the images can have different aspect ratio because we are fetching all the images from an API. We're using the Pixabay API. So we are gonna assign them height based on their aspect ratio. So this one can be 200 by 300. Now, hopefully you understand how a masonry layout works, and we're gonna use this instead of this fixed height grid. So let's remove this, and we're gonna remove all of these fixed height images, and we're gonna copy all the images from our masonry layout and place them here. So let's use an arrow to point to this masonry layout. So first we're gonna implement the header section, and as you can see we have a bit of a padding at the top, and that will be different on all the devices because we have the iOS devices, the Android, and we have the web version as well. So we're gonna use the top property from safe area insets. So some devices can have a notch just like this phone. So if we will check if the top value is greater than 0, that means we have a notch, and we will assign the padding top accordingly. So if we have the notch, then we will use top plus 1 as the padding top. Otherwise we will use a fixed 30 pixels of padding top. Now let's create the styles using style sheet, and here first we will create the container styles. Let's use flex 1 for now, and we will have a gap of 15. Now let's use an array to assign multiple styles. We will have container and the padding top. Okay, we can see the padding top when we save it. So now let's remove this home screen text, and let's add a comment. This will be header, and let's add a view, and let's give it a style of styles.header, and we will have a pressable inside this. We're going to make our title pressable because later we will perform some actions when we click on this title. So let's give it a styles dot title, and here it will say pixels. Let's copy this pressable for our filters icon as well, and we will remove this text, and here we're going to add the icon, and for the icon we are using the Expo vector icons. So if we go to their library, we can see all the resources. If we click on this link, you can see all the icons here. So if you click on filter, you can filter through all of these libraries, and you can use the icons from either one. So let's say I want to use this icon, so I can just import and design, and we can name it, size, and the color, and this will be displayed. So let's use the filters icon, and I'm going to use font awesome 6 for the filters icon, and the name for this icon is bars staggered. Now let's give this a size of 22, and a color from our theme, colors dot neutral 0.7 opacity, and let's save this. Okay, we can see the title and the icon, and it's not looking good. Now let's add some styles to make them look good. Let's add style for header. We're going to add a margin horizontal of WP 4%, and flex direction will be row, justify content space between, and align items as center, and let's save them. Okay, so there is no need to style the icon, but let's add style for the title. Let's use the responsive font size of HP4, and for the font weight, HP doesn't exist. We need to import the HP method. Okay, And for the font weight, we are gonna use the font weights from our theme as semi bold, and we need to style the color as colors dot neutral dot 0.9. Now let's save it, and it's looking good. Now our header part is complete, so let's mark our header as done. So this part is complete, and next we're gonna work on our search bar. One thing I missed on this mockup, we will also have an icon on the right side as well. So let's add another icon. Let's use the close icon and place it on the right side. This will be used to clear out the text inside the input, and this will only appear when we have something inside the input, otherwise it won't appear. So now let's start designing our search bar, and we're gonna have a scroll view after this header because the rest of the content on the home screen will be scrollable. So let's add a scroll view, and we're gonna add a little spacing for all the items in the scroll view. So let's use content container styles, and we will have a gap of 15 like this. Now let's add our search bar. So let's add a comment, and let's add a view and give it a styles dot search bar. And first thing we're gonna do is add an icon for our magnifying glass. So let's add a view and give this a style of styles dot search icon. And inside this, we're gonna add the icon from feather icons. So name of that icon will be search, and size will be 24, and we're gonna give it a color from our theme. So let's use a neutral color with 0.4 opacity. Let's close this and let's save this. Okay, we can see the magnifying glass. Now next we're gonna add our text input. So let's import it and give this a placeholder, and this will say search for photos. And we're gonna have a style property as well, styles dot search input. We're gonna style it later, so for now let's just add the mockup. So after this input, we're gonna have a button to clear out the text. So let's wrap it inside a pressable and give this a style close icon. Let's add an icon from Ionicons. Name will be the close, size will be 24, and let's use the color from our theme, neutral 0.6 opacity, and let's save this. Okay, we can see the search icon, the close icon, and the input. Now we're gonna style it to make them look good. So let's add styles for the search bar. Now we're gonna add a bunch of styles for this one, starting with the margin horizontal. Let's use WP4, and we're gonna use flex direction as row to show them horizontally. And let's add justify content as space between, align items as center. Let's give it a border as well, border width 1, and the border color will be a gray background color from our theme. So let's use theme dot colors dot gray beige, and let's use a background color at white and a padding of, let's say, 6, and let's save this. Okay, we can see our styles now. Let's add a bit more padding on the left side. So let's add padding left of 10, and let's add a border radius to make the corners rounded. Border radius from our theme, large border radius. And let's save this. Now we're gonna need a bit more padding in this section, so I'm going to add this for the search icon. So let's use padding of 8, and let's save this. Okay, now we can see the padding. Now the search input is in the center, but I want to make it so that it takes a full space between the search icon and the cross icon. So flex 1 should do it, and now it's taking the full space. Now I'm also gonna add border radius and a little padding vertical. We won't see these styles here because these are visible on the web version, so don't worry if you don't see these styles on the mobile. Now to make the font size responsive, let's use HP 1.8 for the font size, and let's save it. Okay, we can see the input and the font size is responsive. Now we're gonna style our close icon. So let's add styles for the close icon. First, we're gonna add a background color from our theme. Let's use the neutral color with 0.1 opacity. Okay, we can see the background color. Let's add a padding of 8 pixels, and we need to make them rounded. So let's use border radius, and we're gonna use the small radius from our theme. So the search UI is complete, but now we're gonna work on this button so that it only appears when we have text inside our input. So let's create a state for that. And the default value will be an empty string. Now let's use this inside our text input, and we will change this later because this will re-render the whole screen every time user enters a character, and that is not good for the performance. So we're using this just to show this button now. Now this will set the value inside the search, and using this search we're gonna make a check here. If we have the value inside the search state, only then we're gonna show this pressable. So this button will only appear then. Okay, it's gone because we don't have any value inside search, and whenever I put a value, we see this text. Okay, so it's working as expected. Now I'm gonna create a text input reference for this search because I'm gonna use it later, so I'll just add that now. So let's create a search input reference using the useRef hook, and we're gonna provide it to our text input. Basically we're gonna use it for clearing the text inside this field, so I'll just add that now. Now our search bar is complete, and let's mark our search bar step as done. So next we're gonna work on our category section, and in this section we also gonna add animations to each category. So each category will fade in from the right, and we're gonna use Reanimated for that. So let's go to our app, and first we need to create this categories component. Let's go to components and create categories.js. Let's create a functional component and change the name to capital categories. Let's save this, and after this search bar we're gonna add another view. Let's add a comment first, categories, and let's add a view and give this a style, styles.categories, and inside this we're gonna import our categories component like this. Now let's save this. We can see our categories. Now let's go into that file, and we're gonna display the categories here, but before that let me show you where we're gonna get these categories. So for data and for all the images we are using an API from Pixabay. So this is their website, and this is a very great website for all the images, videos, music, and sound effects. Basically you will need to create your account here, then you need to move to explore and then API section. These are the steps to create the API key and hit get started. Once you create an account on this page, you will find your API key. If you scroll down here, you can see we have the API key. This is my API key. Don't use this one. I will delete this after this video. So here you can see how we can search the images. They have provided a URL for searching the images. We have the API key, and these are all the parameters. And here you will notice we have a parameter called category, and at the bottom they have provided all the possible values for the category parameter, and these are all the categories that we're gonna show into our app in the category section. I've already created an array with all these categories, so let's create a new file inside our constants as data.js, and let's place all these categories here. So these are all the categories, and let's export a data variable with all the categories, and now we can use this data to display all the categories on this section. So now let's start designing our categories. We're gonna use a flat list here. So let's import it, and this will be horizontal, so we need to define it as horizontal. And for the content container style, let's create our styles first using the style sheet dot create. We'll add the styles later. For now, let's just add styles dot flatlist container, and we're gonna hide the horizontal scroll bars. Let's set it false. And for the data, we already have the data from data dot categories from our constants. And for the key, each item will be the key itself, so let's provide the item as the key and render item. This will be the render function for each item, and we will provide a category item component here which we will create later, and we're gonna pass the title as the item. So let's close it and close the flat list. Now let's create our category item. So let's create a new function, category item, and this will receive the title. And for now, we will just return a view with a text that will say the title of the category, just to see if everything is working. Let's save it. Okay, style sheet was not imported, so let's import the style sheet. Let's save it. Okay, we can see all the categories and we can scroll through them, but they look horrible, so we will design it later, don't worry. We also gonna pass the index to category item because later we are gonna animate each category, so we will need this index. So now let's wrap this text into a pressable because this will be a button, so each category will be selectable, so that's why we need to wrap it inside a pressable. Now let's add some styles for these categories. We're gonna add multiple styles based on if the category is selected. So let's use an array, and for now let's use styles.category, and for the title let's use styles.title for now. Now let's start designing, and first we need to add some padding for the flat list container. Let's add padding horizontal of WP4, which will be the width percentage of the device, and a gap of 8 pixels for all the categories. Now we have the gap. Now let's add styles for the category item, and let's use a padding of 12 and a padding horizontal of 15. Let's save this. Now we have a padding horizontally. Now let's add a border for each category. Border width of 1, border color from our theme, which will be a gray background. Let's save it. We can barely see it, but if I add a background color, we can see it properly. Now we can see the design of the category. The background color will be conditional, so I will remove it later. So for the border radius, let's use the large radius from our theme, and the border curve will be continuous. Let's save this. Okay, so each category will look like this if it's not selected. So let's just comment the background color, and we will make this conditional. We'll make the selected category black and other ones will white. Now let's add a style for the title. Let's add a font size of HP 1.8 and a font weight as well from our theme as the medium font weight, and let's save it. Okay, so we have designed our category items. Now let's move to our home component, and we're gonna declare a state for the active category. So we will have active category and set active category, and for the default value we're going to use null. I'm going to make it so that if we click on a category it will be selected, and if we click on it again it will be deselected. Now let's create a function that will change the category. It will receive a category title, and for now we will just use the set active category function, but later we will implement a logic to fetch the images based on this category. So let's pass these values to our categories component. We also gonna pass handle change category function like this. And now let's go to the component and receive these functions, active category and handle change category. Now here in the category item, we're gonna pass a property is active. That will mean if the category is selected or not. We will just simply check if the active category equals to the item. So this will be active, and we're gonna pass the handle change category function. Now let's receive these values in here, and we're gonna make it so that if we click on a category, this will pass a category title. But if it's already active and we click on it again, it's going to pass the null value to deselect the category. So let's call the handle change category function, and here we will make a check. If the item is active already, we will pass null, otherwise we will pass the title of the category. So yeah, now to see it, we need to open the console, and let me console log it in the home component. In here, let's console log the active category, and let's save it. Now by default you will see it's null, and if we click on a category, we have the category name, and if we click on it again, it's again null. And same for all the other categories, we can click on all the categories and it will change accordingly. Now let's remove this, and we're gonna move to categories component. And now using this active category, we're gonna declare some conditional styles. So let me just format this quickly. And the background color and the text color will be conditional based on if the category is selected or not. So we will have a text color, and if the category is selected, then we will use the white color from our theme. Otherwise, we will have a neutral color with 0.8 opacity for the text color. And for the button background color, we will check. Let me just change this to color, because this will be the color property of the text. So we should match the property name. So if the category is active, then the background color will be neutral 0.8, and otherwise the background color will be white. So let's save this, and we need to use these styles here. So background color for the button, and the color will be for the text style. So let's save this. Now if we click on any category, it's going to have a dark background and it's working. And if we click on any other category, it's working, and the text is also changing to white because we made all the styles conditional. So this is now working. Now next, I think we're gonna add animations. So let me just check quickly. So we have completed our categories section. Yes, we're gonna add animations. So for the animations, we are gonna use layout animations, where each category will appear from, actually it will fade in from the right. So we're gonna implement that. Let me just update this to categories with layout animations like this. So yeah, let's use the layout animations. Now we are already passing an index value to the category item. So let's change this to animated.view, and we're gonna add entering property and use the animation fade in from right. And we are gonna use the delay using this index. So delay will increase with the index. So if the index is 0, 1, 2, 3, with each category the delay will increase, so they will appear one after another. And we're gonna add the duration of 1000. As you can see, it fades in from the bottom. Let me just refresh and we'll see again. Okay, it fades in from the bottom. I am also going to add a springify method to have a spring like motion, and we're gonna use the damping function to 14. Damping basically controls how quickly the animation will slow down. So let's check again, and our animations are working great. Let's refresh. So each category is fading in from the right with a very slight spring like motion. So our categories are complete and the animations are done. So let's mark this as done, and next we're gonna work on our image grid. But before we design our image grid, we're gonna fetch the images from the API so that we can build this masonry layout using the images. So For the API, we are using Pixabay API. Let's go to the Pixabay website. I've already shown you this website, and let's go to search images. So this is the API for searching the images, and we have all the parameters here. First, we have the API key that we will use, and we have this query parameter, which will be any string. We will use that for search. We have the image type, orientation, category, and we have all these parameters that we can pass into this get API. Here is the API example with the key and the query as well, and this is the response that we will get. Here we have a hits array which contains all the images, and this is how an image looks like with all the properties. We have the page URL, type, preview URL, width, height, and the web format URL, which we will use to display the image. And you can use all these other properties like comments, likes, user ID, user image. Here is a detail of all the response properties. So if you scroll down, you will see a JavaScript example which you can literally just copy and paste, and this will fetch the images for you. We're also going to use this encode URI component function, which will encode the URI if we are searching for any images. So we'll use this for our query parameter. For now, let's just copy this API key and fetch the images. Let's create a folder here, API, and let's create a file, index.js, inside this. And here let's create a variable as API key and paste our API key here. Okay, so we're also gonna create API URL, and we will copy this from the example that we just saw, and this one. So let's copy all of this and paste it here in backticks. We're gonna remove the last part. Here we will add the API key variable that we just created here, like this. And after this, we're gonna create a function for API call. And this will be an async function which will receive some parameters, and these parameters can be the page number and the search and the active category. So to call the API, we need some client, so we can use either fetch or Axios. I prefer Axios, so I'll install it, but you can use either one. Okay, now we're gonna create a try catch block here. If we get any error, we will just console log the error. So let's console log got error dot message, and if we get any error, we will return a response with success as false and a message error dot message, like this. Now we're gonna call the API and we will get the response. So let's create a response object, and this will be a get request. So let's use await, and let's import axios dot get, and here I'm going to pass the API URL with all the parameters. So we need to create a function that will format the URL with all the parameters. So let's create a function format URL, and we'll pass all the parameters. Let's create this function here, format URL. I got the spellings wrong, so it should be format URL, like this. And we're gonna receive all the parameters here, and these parameters will be included in the API URL, just like how we attach the API key. And these can include the query, which will be the search text, the page, the category, the order, and the orientation. So if we move to API documentation, here is a list of all the parameters that we can use in this API URL. We can basically append any parameter here, but only the query parameter will be encoded, so we will have to check that. So here let's just create a URL, and I'm going to add some fixed values like results per page. So we're going to use a parameter called per page, and I'm going to set it 25. We will only get 25 images per page, so here is the parameter that we can use. We can by default it's 20, so I'm going to set it 25. Then I'm going to add another parameter which is safe search. I will make it true so that the images we get will be suitable for all the ages. Here is the documentation for this parameter. And one last parameter I will add is the editor's choice, and we need to make it true. By default it's false, I think. Let me just check. So by default it's false, but making it true will mean we get only the images that were awarded by the editors. So next I'm gonna check if we don't get any parameter, we will just return the URL from here. So if we don't get any parameter, we'll just return the URL. Otherwise we're gonna get the keys for all the parameters. So let's create param keys, and we'll use object.keys function and pass the parameters. We're gonna loop through all of these parameter keys, and we will add one by one to the API URL. Here we'll get the value for this parameter, but we will check if the key is the query. That means we need to encode URI for this one. So let's use encode URI component, and here to pass the value for the queue parameter. Otherwise we will just add the value for that parameter. Now we're gonna append this parameter into our URL. So let's use AND operator, and the key for this parameter will be equal to the value. So if it's the page parameter, this will say page equals to value, which can be 1, 2, 3. So after this loop, we will get our final URLs, which will console log to see if we got everything right. And we're going to return this final URL from here. Now hopefully this will work as expected and it will fetch the images. Now let's go to our home component, and here we need to create a use effect hook, which will work as component did mount method. And inside this we're gonna call a function which will be fetch images, and we don't need to pass anything here. So let's create this function fetch images. This is going to be an async function which will receive some parameters. So by default these parameters will have page as 1, and second parameter will be append as true. Now this will be helpful when we implement pagination. So we will have some scenarios where we don't want to override the results, we just want to append to already fetched images. So let's just call this API call method with all the parameters. By default, if we don't pass any parameter, this will just pass page as 1. So we will console log the result, got result here to see if everything's working. Now we got the results as undefined, which will check why. And if you look at the final URL, we got the API key, and we got the per page, save search, editor's choice. And if we look at the end, we got our page as 1 that we passed into the parameters. Now let's see why we got undefined. So we did call the API, but we forgot to return the response. So here we will just fetch the data from the response, because in Axios we get the data on the data property, and we will return the response as success true, and data will contain the data. Now this will return the object after we get the response from the API, and we already got this result in the console. As you can see, we got the data property which contains a hits property that will be an array of all the images. So let's just console log the data property, and we're getting a lot of data. Let me just make this bigger, and let's copy all of this into a JSON formatter to see what properties we are getting. So let's copy this and move to this JSON formatter and paste this here. I think we can't add these many objects into this formatter, because obviously we're getting a lot of properties, as you can see in the console. So we have an hits array. So let's just console log the first object in this array. This will be the first image from this list, and we will use this to format it to see all the properties. Make pretty. So each image object will contain these properties. We have the large image URL, likes, page URL, preview height, preview URL, web format URL. We can use these properties to display any size of the image into our application on any platform. And here is the description of all these values. The image that we are going to use in our app is called the web format URL here. This one has the size of 640, which will be suitable for all the platforms, and it won't be blurry. So let's just remove this, and here we will check if the success is true on the response, and we're getting the hits array on the response data. Only then we will set the images. and we're gonna use a state to store all the images. So let's create a new state. Let's call it images, set images, and the default value for this state will be an empty array like this. Now let's minimize this because this is taking a lot of space. Let's just close it. Okay, we're going to set the images here, and we will create a new array with separating all the images from the response from the hits array. This will be the images. So let's save this, and this should hopefully set the images into images state. Now let me explain a very important point here. So let's say when we hit the API for the first time, we get these 4 images. So let's just select them. Let's copy them over to the side. We don't want to mess our style. So let's move them here. So when we first hit the API, we get these 4 images, and as user scrolls down, we get 2 more images. Let's say these are the 2 new images in here. Now these should show at the bottom of the already fetched images. So let's say these are the new images, and let's point to them like this. Now these should stay at the bottom of the already fetched images. These should not override the already fetched images. If we do that, we will lose the previous data and user will only see the newly fetched images. We don't want to do that. So we need to keep the old data, plus we need to append the new data, so that as user scrolls down, he will see the new images, and this will happen again and again. And this is how our pagination will work. So these new images will show at the bottom here. So that's where this append parameter will be very useful, because there will be some scenarios where we want to just append the images. We don't want to lose the old images, and there will be a scenario where we want to override all of the images, like when we select a category or when we search something. If you're still confused about this, don't worry, we will come across the scenarios and then you will understand why we added this. So if the append is true, we will keep the old images first, then we will add the new images, but otherwise we will just override the data with the new images. Now we need to send these images to the images grid, which we haven't created yet. So here let's create a comment here, images grid or the masonry grid, and here we'll create a view. Here we need to make a check if we have the images inside the images state. Only then we will show this image grid. So we need to create this image grid component. Let's create a new file here. Let's create a functional component and rename it, save it, and let's import it here. We're gonna pass our images to this component. Let's close it and save it. We can see the image grid. That means we are setting the data into images state. Now here let's create our styles object using the style sheet dot create. Now we're gonna add the flash list for our masonry layout. So this is their website. This is from Shopify. So first we're gonna install this for Expo. So let's just copy this command. Let's just copy this whole command, and we're gonna install it. Open the terminal and paste it here. Okay, it's installing. Let's see how we can use this flash list. So if we go to fundamentals, the usage, so this is the usage of flash list, but we are gonna use something called masonry layout. So this is the usage of masonry layout. So as you can see, this has the masonry layout like Pinterest. And let's just copy this import statement, and this is installed. Let's close this, and here copy the import statement, and this is the sample code. Let's just copy this and paste it here. Okay, so let me format this, and here we need to provide the images that we're passing to this component like this. We will use 2 columns for phone, but we will change this because we will have different columns on all the platforms. So let's remove this, and here we're gonna add an image card component for each image. So we need to create this component. Let's go to our components folder and create a new file, and let's create a functional component here. Let's rename it and save it. Now let's import this into here, image card, and we need to provide the item as the image data to this component like this. Now everything looks fine, so let's just save it. Image card doesn't exist. Okay, it needs to start with the small I, maybe that's why. Okay, we can see our two column layout and we see a warning flash list render side is not usable. It says that the parent view of this list should have a width or the height. So let's add styles for this container. Styles.container, and we will add a minimum height for this container of, let's say, 3 pixels, and the width should be 100%. So let's use WP 100 like this, and let's save it. Now this should solve the issue. So the issue is gone, but now we see a lot of images, and I think I know why this is happening. So the issue is gone and we see less images now. So that's because we have made the append by default as true, and on every refresh it's fetching the images and appending with the previous images. That's why we were seeing a lot of images. Now let's go to our image grid, and I'm not sure why we're getting the red lines under this image card, but it's working fine. So let's just leave it like that. Now here let's provide the content container styles. So we will have style start list container style, which we will add later. Now here I'm gonna add another property, which is initial number to render. So flash list basically renders the content as we scroll down, but in our case we're loading the images, so I want to load all the images at once. So I'm going to set it at 1000. So if we have 1000 images and we scroll down, we won't have to wait to load the images. All the images will be loaded at once. So that's why we need to set it at 1000. Now let's add styles for the list container style. And we're gonna provide a horizontal padding for this list. Padding horizontal as WP 4%. Okay, now let's move to our image card and start designing. First, we need to get the data that we pass to this component, item and the index. And we're not passing the index, so let's add that property here and the index here. Now before we start designing, we need to fix this column situation. So the number of columns property will be different for each platform, so we need to make it dynamic. Now let's create a constant here, columns, and we will have a function get column count. This will get us dynamic columns for each platform. So let's create this function in our common helpers. And we don't need to pass anything, we already have our device width here. So here we're gonna make a check if the device width is greater than or equal to 1024. That means we're on a bigger device, let's say a desktop device. So in that case we're gonna return 4 as the number of columns. We're gonna make another check here to check if the device width is greater than or equal to 768. That means we are on a tablet, and in that case we're gonna return 3 as the number of columns like this. And if both of these conditions are false, then we're gonna return 2 as the number of columns, because that will mean we are on a smartphone. So let's add a comment phone. Let's save this, and now we can use this to get our dynamic columns for each platform. And let's use it here, columns. We got the spellings wrong. Let's just rename it columns like this. Later, I'm gonna use these columns inside the image card component. So let me just post it here now. And let's save this. Now we're not gonna see any change on the phone, but let's run this application on web to see if everything's working. Okay, it's running on my second screen. Let me just drag it here. And let's make it big. So okay, so this is the first time we are seeing our web version of the app. So the animations are working, and if we hit on start, the category animations are working, and now we see 4 columns of the image grid. That means our implementation is working. And if we click on any category, the active category works fine. So the web version of our app is looking good. Now let me just resize it to see if we see the 3 columns on tablet size. Maybe it's too small. Let's make it a little bigger. Okay, so with C3 columns, that means it's working for the tablet size as well. Now let's move to our image card and start designing. First, we need to change this view to pressable because we need to open a model when we press on this image. And let's create an image component here. We'll have a style of styles.image. We haven't created our styles object, so let's create one using the style sheet. And let's create the image styles, and we will leave it empty for now. So let's use it here, styles.image. And for the source of this image, I've already shown you we have a web format URL as the property on each item. So this will be the image that we will show in our app, web format URL, and let's close it and save it. Now we won't see any images because we haven't provided any styles. So let's use a height of 300 pixels for now, and the width will be 100%. Let's save it. So now we can see the images and we can scroll through the images, and these are coming from the API. Now I'm not going to use the image component from React Native. Instead, I'm going to use Expo image, which also caches the image, and that will be good for the performance as well. So let's move to Expo image. This is the component, and first we are going to install it using this command. Let's just copy this and open a terminal window, paste it here. This will just quickly install it. Okay, so it's installed. Let's close the window, and now we can use this image instead of the React Native image. So let's remove the image from React Native. Now let's use the image. Not sure why it's not coming up. So let's use the import statement from here. And we also need to use these values. So let's just copy this one and paste it here. Now we're gonna keep the styles.image as it is, and for the source of the image, we're gonna use item.webformat URL. So let's copy it from here and paste it here. And we don't need the placeholder, and content fit cover, we don't need this as well. And transition, let's use 100 transition. That will have a smooth transition whenever the image is rendered. So let's save it. So everything is working fine as before. So if I refresh, you will see a slight transition when the image appears there. So now if I scroll down, you will see it's not a masonry layout. Every image has a fixed height, and next we're gonna work on that so that every image will have a different height. So in the styles of the image, we're gonna add one more style. This will be a function that will get the dynamic height of this image. So let's create this function. And here, first of all, we're gonna get the image height and the image width from this item as the height, and the image width will be the width from the item. So if you see the image data that we're getting from the API, you will see we have these properties as image width and the image height. So we're gonna use these to calculate the different height for each item, and we're gonna return an object with the height. And let's use another function here, get image size, and we need to pass the height and the width of the image. So let's create this function into our common helpers, and this will receive the height and the width of the image. Now here we're gonna make a check if the width of the image is greater than the height of the image. That means it's a landscape image. So in that case, we're gonna return a height of 250 pixels. Let's make another check here to see if the width of the image is less than the height of the image. That means it's a portrait image. And in that case, we're gonna return a height of 300 pixels. And if both of the conditions are false, that means it's a square image, and we're gonna return a height of 200 pixels. So let's save it and let's import it here. Now let's save it and see if everything's working. So if I scroll down, you will notice all the images now have different height. So this one is a landscape, and on the top one we have the portrait images, but it's not looking good because we don't have any spacing in between the images. So let's add style for the image wrapper. So let's make this pressable the image wrapper, and we need to add the styles here. Styles dot image wrapper. Now let's add styles for this image wrapper. We're gonna have a background color for this image wrapper, so that until the image loads we will see this background color, and we will use gray background from our theme. Now let's add a border radius to make the corners rounded, and we will use XL radius from our theme. Let's also make the border curve as continuous, and we're gonna make the overflow hidden so that the corners of the image will be hidden. Now for the spacing, we need to add a margin bottom of WP 2%, and now we have a space at the bottom of each image, and still it's not looking good because we don't have the spacing in between the images. Let's just refresh the app and see if everything's okay. So now to add the spacing in between the images, we're gonna use another style property. Let's call it spacing, and we're gonna use margin right as WP2, same as the margin bottom, and we're gonna add this property to the container. Let's use styles dot spacing, and when I save this we will see a space in between the images, but because it adds the margin bottom on every item, so now we are seeing more space on the right side as compared to the left side. So we're gonna make it so that in each row, if the item is not the last one, only then we're gonna add this margin right. So let's create a function and call it is last in row. This will basically check if the item is last in the row, and we will use columns to check if the index plus 1 modulus the columns. If this equals 0, that means this item is last in this row, and if it's not last in the row, only then we are gonna apply the margin bottom styles. So let's use this function here. If it's not last in the row, only then add style spacing. Now this won't apply margin right on the last item, and now we don't see any extra space on the right, and everything is looking great. Now let's refresh the app. Now this spacing does make the left column a bit smaller as compared to the right one, but you'll barely notice it, so we can live with that. So the home screen UI is complete. Now let's go to our steps. Okay, so the UI for this screen is almost done, and let's mark these steps as done. We have done our image grid, the masonry layout. Next we're gonna work on our search and the category implementation, so I'll just add these as a step. And first we're gonna work on the search bar. So it's going to work like this. User will just put in the keyword that he wants to search the images for, and it will automatically fetch all the images based on the search, and it will update the feed at the bottom. So no need to press any button. So now let's implement our search. So we already have a search state which updates whenever user types in a value in the search bar, but there is a problem with this. So it renders the whole screen every time user types in a value, and this is not good for the performance, but we will change this. Now let's create a function that will trigger every time user puts a value. Let's call it handle search, and it will take the text as the parameter. And for now I'll just console log it to see what user is searching for this text. So next we're gonna create a function which will handle the text debounce, and this is going to fix our rendering issue. So for now I'll just comment it because I need to install another library for this debounce function, and the library is called Lodash. Just install this library, and let's close this. So the reason we are using this debounce function is we want to delay the execution of handle search function, and we can only achieve this using debounce function, which takes in a function and the time after which we can call this function. That's why we are using this. So let's import this debounce function from Lodash. And using this, we can pass the handle search function and a certain time after which this handle search function will be called. And for the time, we'll use 400 milliseconds. And we need to provide an empty array for the dependencies of the use callback hook. Now let's use this on our search bar so that we can test if everything is working. Now let's save this, and we are getting an error, internal error. There is something wrong with this library. Oh, okay, so it was Lodash without an A. We installed the wrong library, so let's just uninstall it. Uninstall Lodash with A, and we need to install this correct library. So npm I Lodash, like this. Okay, it's installed. Let's close this. So now hopefully it should work. So let's save it. So the error is gone, and the way it works is it's going to call the handle search after 400 milliseconds whenever we type anything, and we will see it in the console, and it's not working. So we call the handle search, it's correct, and maybe we don't need to use the value, so let's just comment it, and hopefully this is going to work. Now let's try again, and still no logging. What did we do wrong? Oh, we never provided the handle text debounce. Actually, we added it to the categories. So that was the mistake. So let's change it back, and we need to provide the handle text debounce on change text property to the input. Now it's going to work hopefully, and this is going to trigger this handle search function after 400 milliseconds. Let's try again, testing. So finally it's working, and we can see the text in the console, and you will notice it's not logging character by character. That's where the debounce function is helping us. So this is done. Now in this handle search function, we're gonna set the search as a text. So first we will check if the text length is greater than 2. Only then we're going to search for this text. So let's add a comment, search for this text. So let's make another check to see if the text is equals to an empty string. In that case, we will reset the results to show the default images. So first we're gonna empty the images. So let's use set images with an empty array. Then we're gonna call the fetch images with this text and the page property. We're gonna set the page as 1 from here because user will be seeing the results on page 1. But now I'm gonna create a global variable for the page so we can change this wherever we want. So let's reset this page to 1 whenever user is searching for anything. So let's say page equals 1, and we will use this in here. And next option will be query as the text. This is the text user is searching for. Now let's copy this one for the resetting results condition, and this time we don't need to pass the query. A user will see all the default results for the page 1. Now when we fetch the images, I want to see all the parameters that we're passing. So in the fetch images, I'll just console log all the parameters, and I will also console log the append property to see if you're appending or not. So let's save this. So here in the console we can see the parameters. I don't want to see the final URL anymore, so let's just console log this and move back. So when we search for anything, this condition will be triggered, and we should see the new results based on our search. So let's search for cat. Okay, so now we can see the images are showing based on our search, and in the parameters you can see the query is cat, and we can scroll through them. So these are all the cat's images. We can search for anything else, let's say laptop, and we are seeing the results based on the laptop. Let's search for the goat. Okay, so it's working. Now if I clear the text, it should show us the default images, and it's working. So at this time, this if condition is being triggered, and we are fetching the images based on the page 1, and you can see all the parameters. So if we search for anything else, let's say sheep, and we will see the results. Now we're gonna work on this button to clear out the text and show the default images. So let's create a function, clear search. This won't take anything, and this is going to set the search as an empty string. So this will empty the search state, but it's not going to clear the input because we're not using the search as the value on the input. As you can see, we need to clear the input using this search input reference. So we need to call the clear function on the search input reference like this, and this will hopefully clear the search input. So let's use it when user presses on this cross icon, clear search. Let's save this, and it's showing the default results because we just refreshed. So if we click on this, it's going to reset the search state, but it won't clear the search images. So if we click on it again, that's what I mean. But if we use the handle search function with an empty string, that will hopefully clear the images. So let's save this and let's try again. Let's search for the rows, and now we don't see the icon. Okay, we need to wrap this with a function. So this needs to be inside a function like this. Let's save this. I think this is just going to reset the images results. It's not going to reset the input. So let's search for the orange and let's see if we click on this cross icon, and it has resetted the search results, but it's not resetting the input. So maybe we just need to clear the search input in here. So we don't need to call this clear search for now. So let's just copy this and paste it here. Now this is work, and we will use this clear search later. So let's just refresh the app. Let's start. So we're seeing the default images. Now let's search for orange, and we can see the orange images results. And if we click on cross, it's going to reset the images, and the clear search function is working as well. Now next we're gonna work on our category section. So if we click on any category, it's going to show the results based on the selected category. So if we click fashion, it's going to show the fashion results. So the search functionality is complete. And for the categories, we will make it so that if we click on a category, it will also reset the search state, because user can search for fashion while selecting the fashion category. And in that case, we just need to keep the category results. So we will clear the search while selecting category, and we will clear the category while searching for anything. So let's clear the search when user chooses a category, and first we need to empty the images. Now for the fetch images, we need to reset the page property as 1. So let's use it here. And the category parameter will be conditional. So if user selects the category, only then we will add the category parameter, because user can deselect the category by clicking on it again. So we will fetch the images using these parameters, and we're gonna add the append parameter as false, because this will override the results and show the category images on the first page. Let's also do this for searching the images. And if you don't understand this append parameter now, don't worry, I'll explain it later while implementing the pagination. Now this category parameter is coming from our API. So if I show you the documentation, here you can see the category parameter that we are using, and these values are coming from our constants that I've already shown you guys. So if we click on any category, let's choose fashion, and we're seeing all the images based on the fashion category. And you can see in the console we are sending the category as fashion parameter as well. Now if we click on it again, it's going to reset the results hopefully, and it's working. So similarly, you can scroll through this slider and search for any other category. So let's click on food, and this will show all the images based on the food category. So let's click on travel, and now we are seeing all the travel images. Okay, so it's working perfectly. Now, similar to how we reset the search while selecting the category, we also need to reset the category while searching for any images. So in the handle search function, when user search for something, we need to set the active category as null. And if we have the empty string, we also need to set the active category as null here. So let's paste it here. Let me just add a comment, reset the category while searching. Let's copy this for this one here. So now this is going to reset the category while we search for anything. So let's choose another category. Okay, let's choose animals. So now if I search for animals, it's going to reset the category results and it's going to show the result based on what we searched for. So these are the results coming from the searched animals text, and we can scroll through, we can see all the images based on animals. Now let's close this and let's see if we are resetting the search while selecting a category. So if I search for rose, and I see the rows results. Now if I choose animals, this is going to reset the search and it's going to show the animals results based on the category. So this is all working and the search functionality is complete and the category implementation is complete. Now let's move to our document and let's mark this category section as done. Now let's do a demo of what we have done so far. So let me just refresh the app. So on the home screen, we see this animation and by default, we see all these images coming from the API. We can scroll through and by default, I think we are seeing the 25 images. So if we choose a category, we will see the results based on the chosen category and we can search for anything, let's say dogs, and we will see the results based on what we searched for. We can choose any other category from all the categories. So let's scroll through all of the categories and let's choose another category as music, and this will show the results based on our selection. Now this is all going to work on other platforms as well. So let me just refresh the web version of this app and by default you will see these results and we can scroll through the results. We can see we have 25 images and we can select any category. So let's select health and this is showing all the health results, and if we search anything, this is going to reset the category and this will show the results based on the tech search. And if we choose the category again, this is going to reset the search and it's working on the web as well. Let's search for Islam and we will see all the results for Islam, and we can see all the results are in Masonry Layout. So this is working for the web as well, and hopefully this is going to work for Android as well, but we will check this later. Okay, so far everything is working on each platform. So next we're gonna work on this filters model, but let's go to our document and first let's create a mockup of how this filters model is going to look like. So let's pick a rectangle and let's assume this is a model. Let's call it the filters model, and on the top we're going to have a heading that will say filters. So let's place it here. So after this, we're going to have some same filter types. So we will have orders, orientation, and the type of the image. So first we will have the filter name. And below this filter name, we will have some options. These will be all the possible values for these filters. So for the order, this can be the popular or the latest images. And we will have the same view for all the other filters as well. So let's just copy this and paste it below, and this can be the type of the image, either vector, illustration, or a simple picture. So these will be wrapped inside a filter section. So we'll have the same view for both of these. So let me just point an arrow. Okay, so after this, at the bottom we will have two buttons for resetting or applying these filters. So let's say this is the reset button. Let me just add reset and let me make this bigger. Now let's just copy this for the apply button, and this will be apply to apply all the filters. Now we will have one more filter at the bottom of the filter sections, and this will be the colors filter. So instead of all the text values at the bottom, we will have the colors in this section. So let's just say this is a color. Let's just copy this for two more colors, and this will show the colors, so we can choose the color and see all the images based on these colors. So let me just assign them a different color. Okay, so now user can select any color from this list, and if he hits apply, he will see all the images based on these colors, and all the other filters will work like this too. User can select multiple filters and hit apply and get the results he want. Now we're gonna add layout animations on each filter section, so they will animate from basically they will fade in from the bottom, just like how the categories are fading from the right. These will fade in from the bottom. But first thing we're gonna do is create this model. So let me just update these steps, and let's add the first step as create model. And for this model, we're gonna use a component called goham bottom sheet. They have bottom sheet and the model as a separate component, but we are gonna use model component only. So let's just copy this, and actually let's just go to their documentation website. So here you'll find the documentation for the bottom sheet and the model as well. So first thing we're gonna do is install it. So if we scroll down, here is the command to install this library. So let's just copy all of this command, and we need to close the server. So let's paste it here, and now this is installing. Now let's see how we can use this. So if we click on the usage, this is the usage of how we can use a bottom sheet, but we are not gonna use it. We're gonna use a bottom sheet model. So if you see this option on the sidebar, just click on it, and this is the model. So let's click on next usage, and this is how we can use a bottom sheet model. So we're gonna wrap our entire app with this bottom sheet model provider. So let's just copy this import statement, and this is now installed. Now let's just run our app. Okay, so iOS bundle identifier is not found in app.json. I think we don't need it. Actually, maybe this watchman is running, maybe that's why. So let's just run this command, and let's try to reset the cache using this command from React Native Reanimated. Let's run this command. This will reset the cache and start our project. So press I. Still same error. Maybe if we just add a bundle identifier, that way it will work. So let's just copy this bundle identifier, and let's add com.sayed.wallpaper app, and let's save this. Now hopefully this will work, and let's refresh. No development build found for this. Understandable. Now let me just pause this video, and I will check what is the issue, and I will come again. Okay, so I found the issue, and we previously installed this component Expo dev client, and we only need it when we pre-build the app from Expo. So that's why we were seeing this issue. So let me just uninstall it. Okay, it's gone. Now we can run the project, npm run iOS. Now hopefully this is going to build just fine. Okay, it's building, and now our project is working successfully. So the Expo dev client was the issue, and I remember we installed it while we were implementing this Masonry flash list. So that was the reason it's not working. Now let's see if everything else is working. Okay, so next we're gonna wrap our entire app with this bottom sheet model provider. So let's go to their documentation here, and let's just copy this tag, and we will wrap our layout file. Let's go to our root file and paste this here. we need to copy the import statement, not this tag name. So let's paste them here, and we only need bottom sheet model provider. So let's wrap our entire stack with this, and let's copy the closing tag and paste it here. Now let's align them and save it. Bottom sheet could not be found within the project, but we did install it. Let's go to the documentation, usage. Let's just install it again anyway. Let's copy this, open the terminal, and we need to close the server. Paste it here. Okay, it's installed. Now let's run our project again. Okay, the project is running. Just press R on the simulator, and still the same issue. Oh, we were just installing the dependencies. We didn't actually install the library. So let's just go to their usage, and we need to install this library as well. So let's close the server again, install this library, and let's start our project. And hopefully now we won't see this issue. Okay, so that issue is gone. Now I'm gonna add one more wrapper, which will be gesture root handler. And we are doing this because I believe this model uses this gesture handler. So we need to add flex one so that it takes full space. Let's copy this closing tag and paste it here. And we need to format this. Now let's save this, and we don't see any issue. That's a good sign. Now let's close this and move to our home screen. Not this one. This is the welcome screen. Let's go to home screen, and here at the bottom of our scroll view, let's create this filters model. We need to create a new file into our components. Let's call it filters model.js. Let's create a basic functional component. Let's rename it and save it. Now let's import it here. And if I save this, we will see it at the bottom on the home screen. So here you can see our filters model. Now we need to copy the example code. So we need to first create this reference of the model. So let's do it inside our home screen. Let's create a model reference using useRef hook. And we need to pass it to this component because we're gonna have the filters model inside this, like this. And let's go to our filters model. And here we need to create this bottom sheet model. So let's just copy this snippet and paste it here. We also need to import these from the library. So let's just copy the import statement from here and paste it here. We don't need the model provider, so let's just remove it. Now for the bottom sheet model ref, we already passing this from the parent component. So let's use it here, model ref. And for the index, we can use multiple snap points. So let me just copy the snap points from the snippet. And the snap points basically mean we can stop the model at different heights. So in this case, we can use 25% or 50% height for this model, but we're gonna use only 75% height for this model. So these are the snap points. We don't need on change method. And because we only have 75%, so this will start from index 0. And we didn't provided any styles, so let's create styles using our style sheet. Now let's add styles. Actually, let's just copy them from this snippet, because for now we'll just need to see if everything's working. So let's just use these dummy styles. Let's save it. And now if we click on this filters model, this should open the model. So this is the icon, and let's go to home screen. Here, no, here. So when we press on this model, first we need to create two functions to open or close the model. So let's call it open filters model, and we're gonna use the reference that we passed to the filters model, and we can call a function present. This will open the model, and let's just copy this one to have a close filters model, and we can call close function to close the model just like this. Now we can use this function whenever we press the filters icon. So let's add an onPress method here and use the open filters model function. Let's save this. Now if we click on this filters icon, it's going to open the model and it's working, and we can swipe down to close the model, but it's not going to close the model. Actually, we need to specify another property in the bottom sheet model. So the property is enable pan down to close, and we need to make it true so that whenever we swipe down on the model, it will actually close the model. So if I open the model now, you will see the background is still the same, and we need to have some kind of a backdrop to separate this from the model. So let me show you what I mean. So this is the filters model, and if we see it in the full screen, let me just draw another rectangle. So this is the full actual screen of the phone, and the filters model only takes the 75% of the screen. So this behind is this full screen, and we're gonna add a blurred background, blurred backdrop on top of it, so that whenever the model is in the view, we will see this backdrop, and this way everything will look good. So we have created our model. Now let's define a new step, which is to add the backdrop on this component. And we already have a feature where we can add a custom backdrop component on this bottom sheet model. We need to specify a property backdrop component. Now let's create a custom backdrop function, which will receive an animated index and the style from the bottom sheet model, and the index is the same as the index property on the bottom sheet model. Currently it's 0 when we don't see the model, and it will be 1 when the model is in the view. So for now, let's return a view and give this a style for the container styles. Now let's add this container style, and this is going to be an array because we're gonna use multiple styles. First, we will add the style that is provided by the bottom sheet model, and then we will add an overlay style, which will be a dimmed black color. So this should be container style with capital S, like this. Now let's create this overlay, and we are going to have a background of black color, but with an opacity of 0.5, so that we can still see through it. Now we also gonna add an absolute fill property from the style sheet. This basically means it will give this container an absolute value with top, bottom, right and left 0 values. So we have this predefined value. Let's save this, and now if we open the model, you will see we have our own custom backdrop model, which disappears when we close the model. Now we need to make it blurred, and we need to have a smooth transition. So for blur view, we're gonna use a component from Expo, which is Expo blur view. So this is the command to install it. Let's just copy this and quickly install it. Let's open another terminal window and paste it here. Okay, so it's installed. Let's close this and let's minimize this. Actually close this. Now let's add the blur view. So we need to copy the import statement from here and paste it here. So let's add this here, and we need to give it a style as absolute fill, same as we did with the container. So let's use absolute fill from style sheet. Now we can use a tint property to have a dark or light tint on this blur view, and the intensity should be 25. This is the intensity of the blur view. Let's close it and save it. Now when I open this model, we will have a blurred view and it's working. But as you can see, the transition is not very smooth, so this is something we need to work on. To make it smooth, we're gonna use reanimated styles. So we need to add animated styles for this container, and we're gonna use a hook called use animated style. This is the one, and this will have a callback function, and here we need to return a style object which will take the opacity of this blur view. So we need to interpolate the opacity. So let's use interpolate method. So this interpolate method takes a value. In our case, it's going to be animated index, which will translate from -1 to 0 as we open the model. And we need to define an input range for this index value. This is going to be -1 and 0, and an output range which is 0 and 1. So as we open the model, the index value will go from -1 to 0, and the output will change from 0 to 1 for the opacity. So we need to use an extrapolation.collamn method as well to make sure the animation is only performed within the boundaries of the output range. Don't worry if you don't understand all of this, just add this and this is going to work just fine. Now let's add the container animated styles, and we need to change the view to animated view. Now if we click on this icon, we are going to have a fade in transition for the backdrop, and we got an error. Okay, I think this animated index value should be accessible on the value property like this. Now let's start again. Now if we click on this icon, we have a smooth transition, and if I close this, this fades away as well. So this way you can have a fade in and fade out animation for the backdrop. We can also change the opacity of this overlay. So if I make this 0 opacity, we should be able to see through this blurred backdrop, but I want to keep it as dark, so I will just change it to 0.5 opacity, and let's save this. Now this is looking good. So next we're gonna change the styles of this container. So we have content container, flex one, align item center. This is okay. So we're gonna have a new container inside this bottom sheet view. Let's remove this and add a view style as styles.content. And inside this, we're gonna add a text component, which will be the title of this model as filters. So let's give this a styles.filter text. Now let's copy this one more time. This will say filter sections here just for now. So if I open it, we have our content updated. Now let's add the style for this content, and let's give it a flex one so that it takes full space, and a gap of 15 for all the children's inside this, padding vertical of 10, and a padding horizontal of 20 pixels. Let's save this. Why is it not taking the full width? We have the content container as flex 1, so let's just give it a background of red. Okay, so we need to make the width as 100% like this, and save this. Now it's taking the full width. We're not really using the container style, so let's just remove this. Yes, so let's change this to width 100%, and let's comment this. Now all good. So next we're gonna add the style for this filter text. So let's add it here, and let's give this a font size of HP4 using the HP function, and font weight from our theme as semi bold. And for the color of this text, we're gonna use a neutral color with an opacity of 0.8, and we need to have a margin at the bottom, let's say 5 pixels. Okay, so now it's looking good. Now we're gonna add filters data into data.js file in here, but we can get this data from their documentation. So if I go to the parameters description, here you can see we have the image type, photo, illustration, or vector. Then we have orientation, horizontal or vertical. We have all the color properties. I've already created an object with all these properties, so I'm just gonna paste it here. So here we have a filters object with order as an array of popular or the latest, then orientation, type, and the colors. Now we can use this filters data into filters model to display this data for all the sections. So first we're gonna create an object with all these sections, and we're gonna use the same keys as the each filter name from the data object. So order will be a function that will receive some props, and it's gonna return a section view which we'll create later. And we need to pass these props. These props can include filters, active filters, and if we need to update the filters from within the section view. So this needs to be an object. Now let's create this section view. And this will be a function. And for now, let's just return a simple view that will say the section view. Now we're gonna have multiple section views for all the filters. So let's just copy this and change this to orientation, and this one to image type, and then the colors. Now to remove these errors, we're gonna add commas like this. So now we can loop through all of these sections and show them here. So let's remove this text, and we're gonna use an object.keys function to get an array of all the keys for the sections, and each key will be a section name, so it can be order, orientation, or type. And then we will have the index. So on each key property we have this function which returns a section view, and we can get this using sections into the section name. This will return us a function, and we're gonna return the section view. Actually, we need to wrap the section view around each view. So let's create another function, let's say order view, and we need to wrap the section view around it. So let's just create this component. So each parameter will have his own view. Order has order view, orientation will have orientation view, but for now let's just use order view for all of them, and this will say order view. So now this variable section view will return a function that we just created, order view, and we're gonna send this function to our section view to have the title and this view. So let's use section view here. And first we need to pass the title of this section, and this will be the section name, which is the key for each section. So let's use section name. Then for the content, we're gonna use this section view function, which will receive some props and return this order view component. So let's close it and save it. Now we should see 4 section views. So this section view is coming from the section view component, which is just showing the static data for now. Now let's add the keys for each item as the section name. Okay, so the warning is gone. Now we're gonna design this section view to show the title and the content for this order view. So let's create a style. Actually, this will just create a mess in this file. So it's better if we just move this to another file. So let's just copy this section view, and we will need to create a new file in components as filter views. And let's paste it here. Now we need to export this component, and we need to import the view from React Native and the text as well. Let's also create the style object using our style sheet dot create. Now let's import this section view in here, so that just to see if everything is working and we didn't break anything. Okay, so it's working. Now let's go to our section view and start adding the design. So first we will have the section container styles for this view. Then inside this, we're gonna have this text as the section title. So let's add styles dot section title. And after this, we're gonna have another view which will show the contents of this section. And these contents are coming from our filters model, and the title and the content. So if I add the content here, this will show the order view component that we created previously. So let's add the styles for this section container as the gap of 8 pixels. And for the section title, let's use a responsive font size of HP 2.4 and a font weight of medium from our theme. We need to import this HP function because otherwise it would give us an error. So let's use the color from our theme as neutral 0.8 opacity. Now we can see all the sections with the content as order view, which we created previously, but the section view is still showing the dummy title. So let's change this to title and let's save this. Now we can see the title for each section, and these are coming from this sections object where each property is the section name. So now we're gonna work on this order view component. So let's just copy this to the filters view, and we're gonna change this because most of our sections are the same. So let's change this order view to common filters row like this. And we also need to import this where we're using this order view. So let's change this to common filters row, and let's change all of these for now. We're gonna capitalize the title for each section, and I'm gonna use a function for that which uses regex. So here is the function. I will use this. So pause the screen and just copy this one. Now let's use this function here to create a title with the capital first letter, and we need to pass the section name. Now let's use this title here and save it. Okay, so now we have capitalized the first letter for each title. Now each section will require some data to display for all the options, and now we need to create the section data. So we can get this data from our data.js file. We added a filters object. So using that filters object, we're gonna provide this section name as the key, because all the section names are the same as all the properties into the filters object. So if I go to the filters object, you will see we have order, orientation, type, and the colors, and these are the same as the section names. So now we can get this section data for each section, and we're passing this to the section view. Now one more thing we're gonna do is add a filters object to store all the active filters. So let's go to home screen, and here let's create a new state for filters, set filters, and by default it's going to be null. Now we're gonna create some functions to apply or reset these filters. So let's create apply filters. And for now, it will just say applying the filters. So let's just console log it. And after this, we're gonna close the filters model. Now let's copy this for our reset filters function. This will say resetting the filters. And after this, we're gonna close the filters model. Now let's pass these values to our filters model component. First, we need to pass the state of the filters. So let's use filters object. Then set filters function. Let's also pass the close filters function. So in case if we need to close the model within the model component, and on apply will be handle apply. What was the name of this function? Apply filters. Okay, so we need to pass apply filters here. And then one last function will be on reset to reset the filters, and we're gonna apply reset filters function. Now let's go into filters model and receive these parameters. First we have model ref, and then on close, on apply, and then we have on reset. We also have our filters object and set filters function. Now here we're gonna pass these values to our section view. So we have the section view function, which is the view for each section, and we're gonna pass data as the section data. Then we have the filters object, set filters, and we need filter name as well. So that will be our section name. So this section view returns a component which is common filter row, and we're passing this data to display for each section in here. So let's go into our common filter row, and first we need to receive these parameters. So we have our data, and we have the filter name, the filters object, and the set filters function. Now let's add a style for this container as the styles dot flux row wrap. We're gonna add this later. Now inside this, we're gonna check if we have the data, and then we will map through all of the items inside this data. Each value will be a button, so let's wrap it inside a pressable, and within this pressable we're gonna use this value with the capitalized first letter. So let's use this function and use the item as the value, and let's save it. Now we can see we got all the options for all these sections, but we need to provide a unique key for each item. So let's add the key as the item. Okay, so the warning is gone. So let me briefly explain how it's all working. So first we are passing the data into section view function, which returns another component as the common filter row, and within the common filter row component, we are using this data to loop through all the values. Now let's start designing this button, and this will be an outlined button. So let's add the styles as outlined button. Now let's add the style for this text as well. Styles dot outlined button text. Now let's add these styles to make them look good. So go to our style sheet, and here let's add style for outline button. Let's add a padding of 8 pixels and a padding horizontal of 14 pixels, a border width of 1 pixel, and the border color will be from our theme as the gray background. We're also gonna make it rounded, so let's use the border radius from our theme as extra small. Then the border curve will be continuous, and let's save it. Now we can see our buttons, but I don't want to take the full width of the container. Instead, we need to add the flex row to the container. So let's add these styles, flex row wrap, then add the style as gap of 10 pixels, then flex direction as row, and flex wrap as wrap, like this. And let's save this. Why is it not changing? Okay, it needs to be style, not styles. Okay, so now they're looking good. So now we should be able to select each option, and for that first we need to check if the current item is active or not. So let's create a variable is active, and first we need to check if we have the filters, and on the filters object for this filter name, if this equals to the item, that means this current item is active. And we're gonna have a different background color and the text color for this active item. So if it's active, then we will use a background color from our theme as a neutral with 0.7 opacity, otherwise the background will be white. And for the color of the text, if the current item is active, then the color will be white, otherwise we will use a neutral color with 0.7 opacity. So let's use this background color here, and we also need to specify this color for the text here. Let's save this. Now we won't be able to see any change, or we won't be able to click any item yet because we haven't used our set filter function. So next I'm gonna add an onPress method on this pressable, so whenever we click on any option it should highlight. So let's use an onSelect method and pass the item. Let's create this function. The S should be capital inside this function, like this, and this will receive the item, and we're gonna set the filters, but we're gonna keep the old filters as well. So let's spread all the filters. Then on this new filter name, we're gonna use this selected value, and let's save this. Now we should be able to select any item and it should show as the selected option, and it's working. We can use other options or any other item in other sections. So now let me show you the filters object to see how this is changing when we select any value. So let's just console log filters here. Let's save this, and we need to open our console. So right now you can see filters as order popular and orientation horizontal. So let me just refresh the app and we will start again. Yes, so currently, as you can see in the console, the filters are null. And if I select anything, let's choose the latest from the order. You can see we have updated our filters. And if I choose vertical, the orientation is vertical. If I choose the color, color will be orange. And if I choose the type, type is illustration. I can change the values and this will update the filters object as it is. Now for the color filter, we're not gonna use these static values. Instead, we are gonna use the colors here. So let's go into our filter views and we're gonna copy this common filter row component for our color filter. So let's copy it and change this to color filter. So all the parameters will be the same. So and we will use the same filters and this function will be the same. This container will be the same, but we will change the style inside this map function. So let's remove this style, and here instead of this static text value we are gonna use a view that will be the border for each color. So let's add a style for this. It's going to be the color wrapper, and we will add more styles to this later. Then inside this we will have our color. So let's use styles dot color for this one. Now let's save this. Now we're gonna use this component instead of this common filter row. So let's go into our sections, and for the colors parameter, we will use this color filter. Now if I save this, we won't see anything because we haven't added any styles to each item. So let's add style for the color wrapper. We will have a padding of 3 pixels between this color wrapper and the actual color. Then we need to make it rounded. So let's use the border radius as the small radius from our theme. Now we still can't see it because the color don't have a background color. So let's add a background color as the item because all the values are a color. So let's add it. Now we still can't see it because this color don't have a height or a width. So let's add the color style. Let's give it a height of 30 pixels and a width of 40 pixel, and let's save it. We need to add this comma, so let's add it and save it. Now we can see all the colors, but we need to make the corners rounded. So let's add a border radius from our theme. Let's use the small radius like this. And we also need to add another property, border curve as continuous. Okay, so the borders are rounded. Now we're gonna add the border for the outer color wrapper. So let's add a border width of 2 pixels, and we're gonna add border curve as continuous. Okay, so the border radius doesn't look good on the color. We need to remove this padding of 3 between these containers. Now it looks good. So next we're gonna make sure that this border only appears if this particular color is selected. So let's remove all of this, and we're gonna make this border color dynamic so that if the color is active, only then it will have a neutral color, otherwise it will be white. So if the color is selected, we will use a neutral color from our theme with 0.4 opacity, otherwise it will be white. Now let's use this border radius on this color wrapper and let's save it. So now you can see only the selected color has this border, and all of the other colors do have the border, but because it's white, so we can't see it, and it's updating the filters object as well. Now let's move to our filters model, and after these filters we're gonna add some actions. So let's add a comment here, actions. Now let's add a view and give it a style of buttons. And inside this, let's add a pressable and give this a style of a reset button. First button will be the reset button, and let's add an on press method. So if user presses on this button, we're gonna use the on reset function that we're passing to this component. Then inside this pressable, we're gonna add a text component, and let's add a style for this text as styles dot button text, and this will say reset. Now let's copy this for our apply button and change this to apply button style. And when we press on this button, we will use the function on apply like this. Now we're gonna have a different color for both of these button text. So let's use the color for reset button as the neutral color from our theme with 0.9 opacity. And for the color of the apply button, we're gonna use a white color. So let's use it from our theme like this. Now apply button is not visible, but we will add styles for this later. Now let's add the style for our buttons container. We're gonna show these buttons side by side. So let's use flex one, direction as row, and align items to center with a gap of 10 pixels like this. Now we don't really see it, so we're gonna use flex one on both of these buttons. Let's add style for the apply button, and we'll use flex one, background of neutral color with 0.8 opacity. Let's save this, and we should see our buttons. Okay, so maybe we need to remove this. And now we can see our buttons. So we need to make some changes to our content style. Let's add this and remove this. And we need to flex one our buttons container as well. So let's add this. Okay, now it's all good. Now let's add the styles for our apply button. Let's add a padding of 12 and align items to center, justify center, so that the text will be shown in the center, border radius of medium from our theme, and the border curve as continuous. Now let's save this, and our reply button is looking good. Now let's copy this for our reset button and change the style to reset button. And we're gonna change the background color to neutral with 0.03 opacity. Now we can see our reset button, but it looks very off. So let's add a border width of 2 and a border color of gray from our theme. And let's save it. Now it's looking good. Now on the apply button, we are still using the reset text. So let's change it to apply. Okay, all good. Now we're gonna add the style for our button text. So we need to just add a responsive font size on the button text. So let's use our HP method and give it 2.2 height percentage like this. Okay, so our UI is complete. Now let's make our reset button functioning. So right now, if we press on our reset button, we are applying this on reset function, which is in the home component. And here we have a function reset filters, and inside this function we're gonna reset the filters as null like this. And now if I click on the reset button, it's going to reset the filters, and if I open the filters, all the filters are reset. Let's test this again. And if I open the model again, all the filters will be reset. Now let's see if everything's working on the website. So let me just refresh this page and make this bigger. Why is it not loading? Let's just recompile the website. So open the terminal and press W. It's loading. And now let's check the model on the website, and it's looking great. So if I apply some of the filters and then click on the reset button. It's going to reset our filters hopefully. So let's see, the filters are reset. Now everything is working on the website as well. Now let's go to our document to see what we have done so far. So we have added the model, backdrop, and the filter views. Next we're gonna do the implementation step, where if we choose some filters and hit on apply, it's gonna fetch the images based on our selected filters. And if we hit on the reset button, it's going to reset the filters and show us the default images. Now let's go into our apply filters function, and here first we need to make a check if we have the filters. Only then we're gonna apply these filters. So we will reset our page to 1, and then we need to empty our images with an empty array like this. And then let's create a parameters object with page and all the filters. So I'm just gonna spread all the filters here, and these will be included into our parameters. Then we need to check if we have an active category, so we will add that category into our parameters like this. And let's also check if user has searched something. We will include that as a query into the parameters. And after all of this is done, we will fetch our images with all of these parameters. We're gonna pass the append as false because when we apply some filters, we need to override the images to see the results on the first page. So let's save this and see if everything's working. First, let's reset this filter, and I want to see all the images that are latest and have red color in it. So I will choose these filters and hit apply. And it's working, guys. As you can see, we are getting all the latest images with red colors in it, and I can scroll through and see all the images. So if I change the filters, so let's say I wanna see the images with orange color, and if I hit apply, I will see all the images with orange colors. Similarly, we can use other filters. So let's say type as illustration, order as popular, and color as orange. And if I hit apply, I will see all the images based on the filters that we have applied. Now let's choose the type as photo and the color as red. And now if I hit apply and change the category, I won't see the filters applied on the category as well, because when choosing the category we are not including these filters. So here you can see the filters are selected, but they are not applied when we are fetching the images using the category. So let's go into handle change category function, and here we just need to include all the filters. Now let's see if everything's working. So now we have chosen the fashion category. So if I open the model again and hit apply using these filters, we will see all the fashion related images but with our filters applied. And if I choose another category, let's say nature, and we will see all our filters applied as well. And if I make any change, so let's say we choose the color as black and hit apply, you will see all the images into the nature category but with black colors and all the filters applied. Now I'm gonna add these filters when we search for something. So we're gonna add the filters here, and then let's also add here when we reset the search query. So let's save this. Now every time I save this, we see the default images because the fetch images gets called. So that's why we're seeing the default images. So if I hit apply on the filters again, we will see all the black images in the nature category. And if I search for something, now the filters are applying on the search results as well. We have chosen the black color. So we are seeing all the flower images with black colors in them. And if I choose any category, this will reset our search because we have implemented it that way. Now, if I reset the filters, it will reset the filters, but it won't show us the default images because we haven't implemented our reset filters function. So here, let's just remove this. And first we are gonna see if we have the filters, only then we're gonna reset the images. Let's use all of this code and paste it here. We're not gonna include the filters into this API call, so let's just remove it. And we also gonna reset the filters. So let's set the filters as null. and active category will be the same, search will be the same. So let's save it and let's reload our app and see if everything's working. So on start, we should see the default images. We should add a loader here. And if I choose some filters, popular and orange, hit apply, we should see all the filtered images. And let's see if our reset function is working. And if I reset, we should again see our default images and it's working. Now I'm gonna add a loading state. So whenever we are fetching the images, user should see a loading state here. So let's add it after the image grid. First, let's add a comment loading. Then let's add a view and give it a style of margin top and bottom. Margin bottom will be 70 pixel, but margin top will be different based on if we have the images or not. So if we don't have the images, it should show here, but if we have the images, it should show at the bottom to indicate we are fetching the more images. So if the images dot length is greater than 0, then we will have margin top of 10 pixels, otherwise 70 pixels. So let's close it, and inside this we're gonna use an activity indicator and the size will be large, and let's close it and save it. So now if I refresh the app and if I start, we should see a loading state, then all the images. Now if I scroll down, the loader is still there. It's just at the bottom to indicate we are loading the more images, and this will be helpful when we implement pagination. So currently the only way to see all the applied filters is to open the filters model, but I want to see all the applied filters on the home screen as well. So next we're gonna add these. Let me add these into the mockup to see how they will be placed on the home screen. So here we have a list of the categories, and then we have the image grid, and we're gonna move our image grid below, and after the category we will have our applied filters. So let's just copy this and paste it here. So this will be each filter applied from the filters model, and inside each filter we will have a cross icon to close that particular filter. So all of the filters will have this cross icon just like this, and if I close any filter here, this will update the filter state and it will reflect into the filters model as well. So these will be the applied filters. So let's add a text applied filters, and let me just point this to this list. Okay, so after this is done, our filters model will be completed. Then we can finally move to implementing the animations on this filters model. So let's go to our app, and here first we will check if we have the filters. Only then we will show this view, and inside this view we're gonna have a scroll view, and this will be a horizontal scroll view, and we're gonna hide the scroll bar indicators, and let's add the content container styles as styles.filters. Now inside this we're gonna loop through all of the applied filters. So let's use object.keys. This will return an array of all the parameters from the applied filters, and we're gonna loop through all of the filters. This will give us the key and the index. Here we need to return a view, and we need to have a key on this view. So let's use the key value. And for the style, let's use styles.filter item, which we will create later. And inside this view, we will use a text component to show the value of that filter. So let's use filters and the key for this filter. Now let's also add the style for this text component as filter item text, and let's save this. Now if I apply any filter, we will see the applied filters after the categories. So they look horrible, but we will design them later. Now we also gonna have a cross icon along with the filter value. So after this text, let's add a pressable and give this a style as the filter close icon. And on pressing on this icon, we will use a function to clear this filter only, and we'll pass the key. And let's close this, and inside this we're gonna use a close icon. So let's use ionicons, Actually, we have used this icon before in our search bar, so let's just copy this icon here, and we will change the size to 14 and the neutral color to 0.9 opacity, and let's save this. Okay, we can see the close icon. Now we're gonna style them to make them look good. First, we're gonna have the style for the filters, which is the content container styles for our scroll view. And we're gonna have a padding horizontal of WP4. Then let's add a gap between the items as 10 pixels. Now let's start designing our filter item. And we will have a background color from our theme as the gray background. Then let's add a padding of 3 pixels and let's save it. Okay, we can see the background. Now let's add the flex direction as row, and we need to make the corners rounded. So let's use border radius from our theme as extra small. We need to increase the padding, so let's use padding of 8 pixels, and a gap between the icon and the value is 10 pixels. Let's increase the padding horizontal to 10 pixels like this and save this. Okay, so now they're looking good, but they are not aligned into center. So let's use align items as center, and now it looks good. So next we're gonna add the style for our filter item text, and we're gonna have a responsive font size of HP2. Now let's save this. Maybe this is too big. Let's just use 1.8. No, 1.9. Okay, this looks good. Now let's add the style for our close icon, and we will have a background color for our close icon from our theme as neutral color with 0.2 opacity. Then we're gonna have a padding of 4 pixels and the border radius of 7 pixels. Let's save this. Okay, so our UI is complete for the applied filters. We can scroll through these filters, and now we're gonna work on our clear this filter function. So let's just copy this and let's create this function. Let's create it here, and this will receive the filter name, and the idea is we just need to clear this filter from the filters object. So let's create a filters object with Z, and we're gonna use all the previous filters. Now we're gonna delete the filter that we clicked on using the filter name, and then we will just set the filters using this new filters object like this. Now after updating the filters, we're gonna call the API again with page 1 and all these new filters. So let's set the images with an empty array. Then let's define these parameters with page, and let's spread all these new filters. And then we're gonna include the category and the search. So let's just copy these 3 lines because these will be the same. We will include the category, the search, and then we will fetch the images with these parameters. So let's save this and see if everything is working. So let's reload the app, and there is one more thing that we need to do. So if I choose the color filter, it will still show the value but not the color. So if I open the filter model and choose the color as orange, hit apply, you will see this as orange. It's all working, but it should be the orange color, not the orange text. So let's go to our filters here, and here first we need to check if the key is equals to the color, then we will show the color. So if it's color, then we will return a view that will show the color, otherwise it's going to be the text property. So let's create a view here and give this a style as the height of 20 pixels, width of 30 pixels, and a border radius of 7 pixels. Then for the background color for this view should be the value on that parameter. So let's use filters with that key and let's save it. Now we can see the orange color that was selected. Now let's reload the app again to see if everything's working. So let's open the filters model and let's select the latest images with orange colors and hit apply. So now we can see all the applied filters on the top. And if I want to see only the orange images, so I will just close this latest. And now we can see only the orange images. And I can even close this and we will see the default images from the API. And if I choose a category, let's choose nature. And I want to see all the images in nature that have blue color. So if I open the model and choose the blue color and hit apply, we will see all the blue images from nature category. So let's hide this filters console. So our filters model is almost completed. The only thing left to do is add animations for all the sections into the filter model. So next we're gonna add these. So if I open the filter model, here we're gonna add the animation for each section. So all of them will fade in from the bottom one by one. So let's go to our filters model. And here we're gonna add the animation on this section view. So let's add animation on this container. Let's format this and we're gonna change this view to animated view. Then we will have an entering property where we will define our animation, and the animation we're gonna use is fade in down with a delay. So I'm gonna use a delay of 100 millisecond for the first item. So I'll multiply it by 100, then plus 100. For the rest of the items, it will increase by 100. Then for our spring-like motion, we will use springify method and then a damping of 11. And again, damping is just how quickly the animation will slow down, and the animation is already working. So let's just refresh the app and start the app again. So if I open the model, you can see all the sections are animating and they are fading in from the bottom one after another, and it's looking cool. Now we're gonna add animation for our actions as well. So let's just copy this entering property because the animation will be the same. So let's change this to animated view. We're also gonna increase the delay for this animation because this needs to be animated after the color section, and I think it will be 500 because for the first item it's 100, then 2 3 4. Now this is the last item, so this needs to be the 500 milliseconds delay. And let's save this. Okay, it's working. Now let's close this and check this again. So if I open the model, as you can see, all the sections are animating one after another, and it's because we increase the delay for each item. So this section is complete. So let's move to our document and mark the implementation as done. The animations are done. So our filters model is complete. Next, we're gonna work on the pagination. So let's add a new step here, pagination, into our home screen. Now, currently we are only seeing the results on the first page, and I think we have like 25 images per API call. So let's just assume we have these 25 images on this first page. So let's copy it and paste it here. And on the bottom of these images, we see a indicator as well. So let's see if we have a loading component. Okay, perfect. Now let's add it here. So this at the bottom is the end of the scroll view. So let's say end of the scroll view. So when we have the images inside the image grid, the indicator shows at the end of the scroll view, and we're gonna have a logic where we will check if we hit the end of the scroll view, then we will call the API again with the next page. So we will see all the text page images. So if we hit the end of the scroll view, then we will call the API again with the next page like this, and we will make this conditional. So first, to call the next page data, we need to hit the end of the scroll view. So let's just add an arrow just like this. Now we don't need to add anything to our masonry grid because this grid is in the scroll view and the scroll view is on the home screen. So first we need to check if the user scrolls down to the bottom of the scroll view, then we will call this API to fetch the results for the next page. So if I close this and let's say user scrolls down, and if we hit the end of the scroll view, then we will call the API again. So we need to add an on scroll method to this scroll view. This is not home screen. Okay, here. So here we're gonna have a function on scroll which will trigger every time user scrolls this list. And let's add on scroll function, and we will use a function handle scroll which we'll create later. And then we're gonna have another property scroll event throttle. This is basically the time whenever this handle scroll will trigger every time user scrolls this list. So how often scroll event will fire when scrolling, and this time is in milliseconds. So let's add in milliseconds like this. Now we're also gonna add a reference for the scroll view. So let's use scroll ref. Now let's create this reference in here using our useRef hook like this. Now let's create this scroll handle scroll function. Let's create it here. And this will receive an event from the scroll view. And for now, we will just console log that scroll event fired like this. And let's save this. Now, when I scroll down, you will see in the console, this every time I scroll down, this scroll event is being fired. Now, before we start implementing this function, I'm gonna add another function on this logo. So whenever we click on this title, it should scroll to the top because that will be very handy. So let's use an handle scroll up function. And because we already have a scroll view reference, so we can use that to scroll to the top. So we can use a function scroll to and provide an offset. So y will be 0 and animated will be true so that it animates while scrolling to top. Let's save this and see if it's working. So if I scroll down and click on this logo, it moves to top. So let's check again. Okay, it's working great. Now we're gonna work on our handle scroll function, and first we're gonna create a constant that will be the content height. So we can get the content height from event dot native event. Then inside we have the content size, and on the content size we can get the height of the content inside the scroll view. Then we're gonna get the scroll view height, and that will be the total area visible on the screen. So we can get this using the native event dot layout measurement and then the height inside this. Then we're gonna get the scroll view offset, and that is how far the user has scrolled vertically. So we're gonna get the y value on the content offset like this. And then we're gonna calculate the bottom position of the scroll view. So bottom position will be the content height minus the scroll view height, and that will give us a position at the very end of the scroll view. So now we need to make a check here. So if the scroll offset is greater than or equal to the bottom position minus 1, that means user has hit the end of the scroll view, and in that case we will just console log a message here, reached the bottom of the scroll view, and let's save it. So let's just reload the app and see if it's working. So currently we don't see anything in the console, but as I scroll down to the bottom and when I hit the end, you will see it's being triggered multiple times because it will trigger every time user scrolls even for a pixel. So that's why it's being triggered multiple times, but we don't want to make the API calls for all these times. So we will use a state to call the API when the end is reached. So we will trigger this state. Otherwise, if user scrolls away from the bottom, then we won't make this API call. So by default, this is going to be false. Now let's use this inside our handle scroll function, and we will make a condition here. So if user scrolls away from the bottom position and this isn't reached is true, then we will make it false. So set isn't reached to false. And inside this if condition, we're gonna make a check. If the isn't reached state is not true, only then we're gonna console log this message. So let's copy this message and paste it here, and let's save it. Now let's reload the app to see if it's working. Let's start the app, and now if I scroll down to the bottom of the container, I think it will still trigger multiple times because we need to set this is and reach state to true while we are inside this condition for the first time. So let's make this true when we hit this condition. And now let's reload again to see if it works this time. And now if I scroll down to the bottom, it will only console log the message once, and if we move away from the bottom and then move to the bottom again, then again it will console log the message once. So now it's all working and we can fetch more images here. So if we hit this if condition, then we need to increase the page number. So let's use plus plus page. Now it will fetch the results for page 2. Now let's create a parameters object. Let's pass the page and spread all the filters. Now here we need to make an if condition to see if we have any active category. And if we do, we will add it as the category parameter. And same for the search parameter. If we have any search term, then we will add it as the query on the parameters. Now using these parameters, we're gonna fetch the images. So let's pass all these parameters, and this time the append feature will be true because we need to fetch these new images and append these images at the bottom. So let's just make the append true by default. Now it will keep the old images plus append the new images. So let's reload our app. And by default, we will see all the results on the page 1. As you can see in the parameters, append is true by default. Now if I scroll down and hit the bottom of this scroll view, we can see the more images are being added because now we are on the page true, and because the append is true, that's why it has added the new images at the bottom plus the old images. So now we are on page 3, and as we scroll down, it will fetch the more images for the next page and it will append at the bottom. So we can scroll through endlessly and see all the images. And if we choose any category, so let's choose fashion. By default, we will see the page 1 results for the fashion category. So if I scroll down and hit the bottom of the scroll view, then the category will be fashion, but we will see the page 2 results and these will be appended at the bottom. And no matter wherever we are, if we choose any category, it will reset the page and override the previous images. So if I choose the animals category, now we will see only 25 images on the first page of the animal category. And if I scroll down, it will load more images. And this should hopefully work if we search for anything. So let's search for cat. And by default, we are seeing the first page results for the cat query. And if I scroll down to the bottom of the scroll view, then the query will still be the cat, and we will get the results for the page 2. And we can scroll through all of the images to see for the page 2 results. Now hopefully our filters still work too. So if I choose all the images with black color and hit apply, we can see the colors are black, page 1, and the query is cat. So everything's good here. And if I remove this query, we should still see the black colored images on the page 1. So this is all working. So let's remove this and we should see the default images back to page 1. So with this, our pagination is done and our home screen is complete. Now let's move to our document and mark this pagination step as done. Now let's move to our final screen, which is the image screen, and that's going to be a model. So let's create a mock-up of this screen. Let's pick a rectangle and then draw our screen here. And let's define it as the image screen, which is going to be a model, and all of this screen will have a background blur. So we will use a blur background for this screen. And on top of this background blur, we will have the image details. So this will just show the image. So if we click on any image into the image grid, this will show the image here. So this is going to be the image component. Then after this image, we will have some actions here at the bottom. So let's pick an oval shape for these action buttons. Let's copy it 2 more times like this. And we will have some options like to close this model, or to download the image, or to share this image, or on any other platform. So we'll use these actions. Then at the bottom, we will have a toast as well. So if we download the image or share the image, we should display the user that image is downloaded. So for that, we will add a toast message here like this. Now let's add a label for this toast message and point to this toast. Okay, so this is how our image screen model will look like. Now first we're gonna create this model. So I will add a new step, create model, and let's move to our app and start creating this model. Now let's create a new file under the home directory as the image, and let's create a functional component as image screen. Now we're gonna add this into our layout file and define it as a transparent model. So let's copy this and change the name to home/image. And under the options, we're gonna define the presentation as a transparent model. And for the animation of this model, we are gonna use fade, so that whenever this model opens, this will fade in. So this model needs to be open from the image card here, and we don't have a router here, and it's not a good practice to define the router here. So we will define this router into our home screen. So let's create our router using use router hook. Then we need to pass it to our image grid here. So let's pass the router to image grid and move inside. Then we need to receive it here and then pass it again to our image card like this. Now we can use this router into the image card to move to this image screen model. And when we click on this image, this will open the new model that we just created. So we need to push the pass name as home/image, which is the new screen, and then we need to pass all the parameters as the image data as well. So let's just spread all the item data so that we can use this image on the next screen. Now let's save this and test if this opens the model. So if I click on any image now, okay, it already opened the model, as you can see on the top, but it was transparent, so that's why we couldn't see the background. So let's reload the app and start designing our image screen. And first we're gonna have a background blur for this screen. So we're gonna use blur view from Expo Blur. Then let's add some properties as the tint will be dark, and then the intensity of the blur will be 60. Now let's create styles for this container using our style sheet. And let's add the styles for the container as flex1, justify center, and align item center as well. And let's add a padding horizontal of WP4. And let's save this and test if this is working. So why is it not showing? Oh, I forgot to add the styles for this container. So let's use styles.container and let's reload the app and see again. Now if I click on any image, it will open the model and the model will have the blur view and it's working. Now we don't have a way to go back to the previous screen. So first let's create our router and we will create a back button so that we can move to the previous screen. So let's create a button here and give this a title as back. And when we click on this button, we need to use the back method on our router and save this. Now we can barely see this back button, but if we click on this button, it goes back to the previous screen. Now I'm gonna add a black overlay on this screen. So let's use a background color and I'm going to use the black color with 0.5 opacity so that it will still be transparent and we should still be able to see through it. Okay, now it's working and we can go back. Now I'm gonna add the image on this model. So first we need to receive the data that we passed to this component. So we will get the item using the hook. We use local search params. Let's just console log this to see if we're getting the image data here. Let's save this. Now if I open any image, you will see in the console we are getting the image data, and this is the same data that we are using into the image card. So we'll use this data to display the image here. Now let's minimize this. So first we need to create a view here as a container for this image. Let's give it a style. Let's leave the styles as empty for now. And we need to use Expo image here. So let's import this one and give this a transition of 100 milliseconds. Then the style as styles.image. And then we need to add the source as the URI. So let's create this URI. We were previously using web format URL to display the image on this data. So let's use the same here, URL. So we need to add a loading state until the image loads. So we will add onLoad method and we will turn off the loading state when the image will load. So let's define this function onLoad and we will turn off the loading inside this. So let's create this loading state. Actually, let's just not use the loading and use the status, because we can use the status for multiple things like downloading or sharing the image. So by default, it will be an empty string and we will reset it when the image loads. Don't worry, I will explain more about this later. So let's save this and we won't see the image now because we haven't provided any styles for the image. So let's go to our style sheet and add image styles. First, we need to make the corners of the image rounded. So let's use the border radius from our theme as the large radius. Then the border width of this image will be 2 pixels. And for the background color, we will use a white color but with an opacity of 0.1 like this. Now let's use the same color for the border color as well. So let me just copy this and paste it here and let's save this. Now we still can't see the image because we haven't added any height or width for this image. Now let's go to our image and create a function that will get the dynamic height and width of this image, because each image will be of a different aspect ratio. So we need to have a logic to get the dynamic height and the width for this image. But for now, let's just return a fixed width of 200 pixel and height of 200 pixel as well. And now we can see our image, but it looks very small. So we still have a lot of things to do here. But for now, we have created our model. So let's mark this as done. And we have added a background blur on the screen. So let's mark this as done. Then we have added our Expo image, but we haven't added the loading state, so I won't mark this as done for now. Next, we are gonna define a dynamic aspect ratio for this image. So let's create a variable as aspect ratio, and we can get aspect ratio by dividing the image width with the image height. And we already have the image height and the width on our item. So let's do this. And then we need to get the maximum width of this device. And for that, we will use a different width for if we are running this application on the website. So if the platform.os is web, that means we need to use only 50% of the width. Otherwise, if it's a phone or the tablet, then we will use 92% of the width. Now using this maximum width, we're gonna calculate the height for this image. So let's create a variable calculated height, which will be maximum width divided by the aspect ratio. And then the width will be our maximum width, like this. Now the images can be portrait or landscape, but we need to recalculate the width based on if the aspect ratio is less than 1. That means this image is a portrait image. And in that case, we will recalculate our width using calculated height multiplied by the aspect ratio, like this. Now we have our calculated width and the height. Now we can return these values instead of these fixed values and the calculated height. So if I save this, this will show the real aspect ratio of the image. So this was a portrait image, but if I open this image, this is a landscape image, and we can see by opening the image if it was a portrait or the landscape image, because we adjusted the height and width using the aspect ratio. So this is all good. Now, if the image is still loading, we need to show a loading state. So for now, if I open an image that is not loaded, you will see a transparent white color, but we need to show a loading state here. So let's move to our image component. And for the container of this image, we're gonna use the same size as the image size. And this shouldn't change anything. So if I open the image, everything is still the same. Now let's close this terminal. And inside this container, we're gonna add another view for showing the loading state. So let's add a view and give this a style as style start loading. And inside this, we will make a check here to show the loading only when the status equals to the loading. And if it's loading, then we will use the activity indicator from React Native. Size will be large, and let's use the color as white. Now let's close this, and by default we need to make the status as loading so that we will show the image is being loaded, and when the image is loaded, this function will trigger and this will reset the status and the loading will be gone. So now we need to add the styles for loading, and we need to make it position as absolute and justify everything center because we have a loading inside this. So we need to show this loading into the center of this div. So width will be 100%, height will be 100%, then justify content as center and align items as center as well. And let's save this. Now we should hopefully see the image loading. Let's start the app. Now if I click on any image, we saw the loading, but it was for a split second because the image loading was quick. Okay, same here. Let's quickly open another image. Okay, we can see the image loading and it gets hidden when the image loads. So this is all working now. Next, we're gonna add the actions at the bottom of the image. So our Expo image is done, loading is done. Now we're gonna work on the actions at the bottom of the image. And let's also remove this and add it as a separate step like this. Now let's add these actions. So we're gonna remove this back button. And here let's add a view. This will be a container for all the buttons. So let's give it a style buttons. And inside this, we're gonna wrap each button inside a view so that we can animate it after. And then let's add a pressable and give it a style as styles.button. And inside this, we're gonna have an icon. We're gonna use a cross icon to close this model. And for that, we will use Octagons library. And the name of the icon will be X. Size will be 24. And the color for this icon will be white. Let's close it and save it. So now we can see the cross icon. We're gonna copy these 2 more times for our download and share icon. And for download icon, we have download as the icon on Opticons. And for the share icon, we're gonna use another library and typo, and the name is share. I'm using Expo vector icons for all of these icons, so you can set up this and use all these different libraries for all the icons. Now when user presses on this close icon, the model should close. So we're gonna use router.back function here. Now if I click on this cross, our model disappears. So this is working. Now let's add these styles into our style sheet. Let's add style for the buttons, and we will have a margin top of 40, then flex direction as row, align items as center, and let's save this. We need to add a gap between these items, so let's use a gap of 50 pixels. Okay, all good. Now we're gonna add style for each button. So let's use the button style, give it a height of HP 6% and then width of HP 6 as well. Justify content center. We need to make the icon into the center position, so align items in the center as well. And we need to have a white background with 0.2 opacity like this, and let's save this. Okay, we can see the background. We need to make the corners rounded, so let's use border radius from our theme as the large radius, and we need one more property, border curve as continuous. Let's save this. So the actions are looking good. Now next we're gonna add styles. Actually, we don't need to add any styles now. Let's see what we need to do next. So we have added the actions, and next we're gonna add animations. So let's change this view to animated view. And let's add entering property to define the animation. And we're gonna use fade in down animation with springify motion like this. Now let's copy this for the rest of the icons. And I'm gonna add a delay for the download and the share icon. So for download, it will be 100 millisecond delay, and for the share icon, it will be 200. So they animate one after another like this. Now let's close this and open the image again, and now you can see all the actions are animating. They're fading in from the bottom and it looks cool. Now next we're gonna make them functional. So let's add an onPress method on this download button, and when user presses on this button, we're gonna have a function that will download the image. So let's use handle download image, and for the share button, we will have a function handle share image. Now let's define these functions here. Handle download image, this will be an async function. We will define it later. And let's add the other function, handle share image. This will also be an async function. Now for downloading the image, we're gonna use a component from Expo. So the component is called Expo file system. This is the component, and this downloads the image into your document directory. So we're gonna use this component. Now first we need to install this component. So let's copy this command and open the terminal, paste it here. Okay, it's installing and done. Now let's close this, and we're gonna import this library into our file. So let's just copy the import statement from this sample code if we have any. Looks like they just directly use this library. Oh, here. So let's just copy this statement and paste it here. Now we're gonna use the file name to save this file name into our documents, and let's see where we can get this file name. So on the page URL, we have the file name Blossom Bloom Flower, but we don't have the file extension, and we get the file extension and the file name only in the preview URL. So at the end, you can see we have the file name and the file extension. So we're gonna use this to get the file name. First, let's create file name variable, and on the item dot preview URL, we're gonna split this by slash, and this will give us an array splitted by the slash, and at the end we will have the file name. So we'll just simply pop it. This will be our file name. Then we need the file URL, that will be our URI, and after that we need the file path where we're gonna save this file, and that we can get from our file system. So if we just type file system dot document directory, this will give us the system directory for the documents. Then we're gonna append the file name. So this will be the file path where it will be saved. Now let's create another function to download the image. Download file. This will be an async function, and inside this, first we're gonna create a try catch block. So in case if we get any error, we will just simply catch this error and then console log this error. Got error, and we need to alert this error as well. So let's use alert from React Native, and then the title will be image and the message will be error message. And if we get any error, we will return null. Now we're gonna call a file system function which will return us a response that will contain a URI. That will be the path where the image is downloaded on our system. So let's use this function file system dot download async. This will receive the file we are downloading and the file path. I've already defined the image URL and the file path here. So now if we get the URI from this function, we will just simply console log this, that downloaded at this URI. And if we get the URI, we will just simply return this from this function like this. Now let's use this download file inside download handle download image, await download file, and let's save this. Now if we click on the download icon, it will download the image and console log the URI here. So let's click on download, and the image is downloaded, and if we click on the file, it should open from our documents. So our download function is working. Now I'm gonna add a downloading state. So let's add an indicator when we click on the download icon. So first we need to add a condition here. So if the status is equals to downloading, then we're gonna show a loading, but otherwise we will add this button if the status is not downloading. So when the status is downloading, we're gonna have a view with a style. Let's use the styles dot button because we are still gonna use the button style. And let's choose an activity indicator. Size will be small and the color will be white. Let's save this. Now we're gonna change the status to downloading when we click on the download icon. So before calling this function, let's use the set status and set it to downloading. Now this function returns a URI if the image is downloaded. So we will store the URI, and here we will check if we got the URI. Then for now we'll just simply console log a message image downloaded, but later we will add a toast message. So let's just add a comment show toast later. Now we are setting the status to downloading, but we need to reset it after downloading the image. So let's reset it to empty string here. And let's also do that if we catch any error. So let's paste it here and save this. Now if I click on the download icon, we see a loading and the image is downloaded. Okay, so the download function is complete. Now we're gonna work on sharing the image, and for that I'm gonna install another library which is Expo sharing. And this library basically allows you to share the files on other apps. and we can use it to save it to the gallery as well. So this is just a demo of how this library works. Now let's quickly install this library using this command. Let's open the terminal and paste it here. Okay, it's installing and done. We can close it. Now first we need to add a loading state when we hit the sharing icon. So let's just copy this and paste it here. Now let's replace this download icon with the share icon like this. And when user clicks on this function will trigger, and first we're gonna change the status to sharing so that we can show a loading state. Sharing like this, and once the status is sharing, this will show the loading if the status equals to sharing here. Now first we're gonna download the image, then we will be able to share that image. So we already have the download file function, so let's get the URI from download file function. First we'll check if we have the URI, then I will share this image using our library that we just installed. So let me just copy the import statement and paste it here. Now using this library, we have a share async function that receive a URI to share it. So let's pass this URI and let's save this. Now let's see if this is working. Now if I click on the share icon, we see a loading. And once the image is downloaded, the share model pops up and we can share the image on all the other apps. But for now, I'll just save it to the gallery and we'll see if we have the image into the Photos app. And we can see the image, so it's working. Now let's go back to our app. Let's just reload the app and see if everything's working. Let's start the app and we can see all the images. And if I open any image and hit the download icon, the image is downloaded. We can see in the console, and if we share the image, the share image model pops up. So everything's working here. Now we need to add a toast message to show the image is downloaded, because currently it only shows into the console. So first let's move to our document here and let's mark this as done. Our actions are complete. Now we're gonna work on this toast message. So think of it as this will be placed at the bottom of the screen, and once we download the image, it will pop up with this smooth transition. So this is how it's going to work. Now let's install this pop-up library, and we're gonna use React Native toast message for this. So let's just copy this command and paste it into the terminal to install this library. Okay, it's installed. Now let's see how we can use this library. So let's go to this quick start. And first we need to import the library, then we need to place it into our root component. But let's just copy this import statement and paste it into our image component, because we only gonna show the toast here. And let's add this toast component here like this. Now let's see how we can show a toast message. And we have a function here, show toast, that shows a success message. So let's just paste it here. Now we're gonna pass a message that will be our custom message to this toast, and this will be displayed instead of this text one. And we don't need this text too, which is the description. So if I show you the demo, this is placed at the bottom. We don't really need this. So let's just remove this and add a position property at the bottom, because this will be displayed at the bottom of the screen. Now we're gonna show this toast message when the image is downloaded. Currently this just console logs a message. So let's just remove this and use this show toast message. And for the message, let's pass image downloaded like this. Now let's see if everything's working. And once we click on the download icon, we can see the toast message, but the style, we need to change the style to match our own theme. So let's create the toast configuration. And inside this, we're gonna change the success message. So on the success property, this will be a function that will receive the text one, some props, and then the rest of the props. And this will return a view that will show instead of the default success message. So let's create a view and add a style for this as styles.toast. And inside this, we will simply show our text one as a message. And let's add a style as styles.toast text. Let's use text one here. Let's save this. Now we're gonna pass this toast configuration to our toast component. We're gonna use another property to show the toast for only 2.5 seconds, and the property is visibility time, and this time is in milliseconds like this. So now if I click on the download icon, we won't see the toast message. That's because we have added our custom style for this success message, but we haven't added any styles for this. So let's go to our style sheet and add the style for the toast. Let's give it a padding of 15 pixel, padding horizontal of 30 pixels. Then need to make the borders rounded. So let's use the border radius as extra large. Then justify content in the center and align items in the center as well. And for the background color, we will use a transparent white color. So let's use the white color with an opacity of 0.15 like this, and let's save this. Now if I click on the download icon, we see the toast message, but we don't see the message. So let's add the style. And first we will add a responsive font size using our HP function. So let's use HP 1.8, and then font weight will be semi bold from our theme. And then color of this text will be white. So let's use it from our theme as well, like this, and let's save this. Now if we click on the download icon, we see the toast, but we don't see the toast text. Let's see why is it happening. So we're showing the text one here, and the text one is the message that we are passing. Let's just refresh the app, and maybe it was some cache issue. So now if I download the image, still the same. Okay, what did we do wrong? Maybe we need to remove this return statement and just return this UI like in the rounded brackets like this. Let's format this and save this. Maybe this will work. So let's download the image, and still not working. Okay. We used the text component from React Native. Yes. Then did we use the style wrong? No, the text style is correct. I hate this part because everything looks all right, but still it's not working. So this text one is coming from the message. Oh, okay. So this message should be a string because we passed a string and we are parsing it from an object. That's why it wasn't working. So let's download the image again, and now the toast is working and I don't have to switch the career anymore. I love the programming again. So this toast functionality is complete. Now let's go to our document here, and the toast is working now. So let's mark this as done. Now let's review everything we have done so far. So basically the application is complete now. So first we created this welcome screen, then we moved to home screen, we created categories, filters, and the image grid, which is a masonry layout. I've shown you guys how we can use the masonry grid. Then we moved to filters model. We added animations, filters, and then lastly, we implemented our image screen. We also added a toast message, which I just used to don't show the download status, but you can use it for literally anything. So now you know how to add this toast message to your application. Now let's open our app into Android emulator to see if everything's working on all the platforms. So let's move all the screens here. Let's reload the app first. Okay, let's reload on the iOS as well. And let's move to welcome page on the website. Now, first we're gonna test if everything works on the website. So let's start the application. And on the home page, we see all the categories and this masonry layout. And if we scroll down, this loads more images. And as we scroll down, all the images will load. And on the top, we have this category. So if I choose a category, this will show only the backgrounds. We can choose other categories, science. This will show only the images into the science category. We can open any image and this opens a model. We can close. We haven't implemented the download and the share functionality for the web. So let's do that now. So I think this library won't work on the website. So when we share the image, we need to have a check here. If the platform.os equals web, then we need to just simply show a toast message that will say link copied. But you can use window.location to move the user to other applications on the web. I'll just add this simple toast message like this. And when we download the image, we need to open the image into another window. So let's use the same check here. And let's move these into the else part. Now to download the image on the website, we need to create an anchor tag manually. So let's create an anchor tag using document.createElement, and the tag name will be a. And we need to add properties on this tag. So href will be the image URL that we're going to download. Then target will be blank so that it opens into a new window. And then download will be the file name. And if we don't have the file name, then it will just simply be download like this. Now we need to append this to our document. So document.body.append child, and we need to append this anchor tag. Now it's in the document and we can click on this tag. This will open the image into the new tab. And finally, we can remove this child from the body. Okay, so now let's reload the app and see if everything's working on the website. So let's go to the welcome page of the website. So let's just copy this URL and paste it here like this, and let's start the app. And now if I open any image and click on the download button, it opens the image into new tab and we can save it from here. And if we share the image, this will just say link copied. You can use the clipboard component to actually copy the link, but I will leave that part up to you guys. So if I click on fashion, we see the fashion images. We go to buildings, we see all the images related to building. If we open any image, this opens the details. So all the features are working on the website. Now let's see if everything works on the Android side as well. I believe this is the first time we are using this app on the Android. So let's hope everything works. So if I scroll down, we have implemented pagination and this loads more images. Let's scroll down and we should see the results on the third page. Okay, now if I click on this logo, this moves us to the top and we can choose a category. Let's choose places. And this will show all the images related to places. And if we open the filters model, we see all the animations are working on the Android. If we choose some filters, this will show all the places with black colors in it. So we can scroll through all of them. And if I open any image, this opens a details model. It's working. We see all the applied filters here and we can close them from here. So let's choose the white color, which is at the end. And we will see all the images with white colors in them, and we can open any image. So the filters are working and the categories are working, and if we select nothing, this should show us the default images like this. Now let's see if the search is working, and let's search for kids, and this should show us the kids images from the API. Let's close this, and this is a very cute picture of a kid. And if we open it, we can see the details. So everything's working on the Android side. Now let's see if everything works on the iOS. We have already tested it, but just to make sure if everything works, we can open the image details. We can choose any other category. Let's choose animals. And this will show the animal images from the API. We can go to the bottom and this will load the next page images like this. Also, the image loading is very fast, and that's because we're using Expo image, which uses cache to load the images faster, so we don't have to load the API images again and again. If we click on this title, this moves us to the top, and by default we will see these images. Now let's search for code, and we will see all the images related to coding, and I like this one. So this is all working. We have also implemented the download and the share functionality. If I download the image, it will be downloaded into the document directory. And if I share the image, you will see this share model to share the image on any other application. We have also implemented the filters. So if I choose any filter, let's choose the latest images. We have horizontal and vertical orientation for the images. Let's choose vertical. Then we have photo, illustration, and the vector as the type. So let's choose vector and then hit apply. Now we should see all the filtered images based on what we selected. So this is all working now. Currently we have selected the vertical filter, so that's why we are seeing all the vertical images. But if I just want to clear this specific filter, I can do that as well. And now we will see the mixed orientation images, because our masonry layout works only with mixed orientation images. So if I want to apply all the filters at once, I can do that as well. So let's choose the color as black, then orientation as vertical, and hit apply. And now we will get results based on our filters. So with this, our application is complete, and we have learned to implement gradients and models, how to create responsive UI, and make our app compatible with all the three platforms. We have learned about API integration, downloading and sharing the content. On top of that, we have also implemented animations in our app to further enhance the user experience. I was using the free API key from Pixabay to create this app only for educational purposes. But if you plan on publishing this app on app stores, then you have to contact to Pixabay for that. I've put so much effort into creating this video, and if you have learned something from this, then do like the video and subscribe the channel if you haven't already, and share this with your React Native buddies. You can find the source code link in the video description, and if you want to support this channel, I will leave the link of my page on Buy Me a Coffee, so there you can support this channel. This will help me create more free project videos like this one. So if you still have any questions about anything, you can ask them into the comment section, and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. So this is it for this video. See you in the next one.